Hello, I'm Gil Zilka. Welcome back to my channel, Essential Classical Music, where we discuss the best recordings of the classical music repertoire. And in this video, we come to choral works, which for me, as I said last time with vocal works, this is a sort of homecoming for me. I would say even more so in this case, because when I look back at the last several decades of my music making, most of it has been with choral repertoire, either as a chorister or as a soloist. In fact, I've performed the majority of the works that we'll be discussing today. And aside from being something that is obviously very close to my heart, it really is a fascinating genre. First of all, when I think of choral works, one of the first things I think about is the large ones, the theatricality, the grandioseness of having a chorus and an orchestra and these operatic soloists. And so often you have composers who their magnum opus is a large choral work. I think, of course, most famously of how Beethoven ended his final symphony with the Choral movement. There's just that largeness and that dramatic impact that you get with the combination of those forces. And then ironically, on the other side of the spectrum, you have the small like motets and madrigals that went back to the Renaissance, really the beginnings of Western music. And the irony there is more of like really simplicity and instead of grandiosity. So you have a real wide spectrum within choral music itself. I do want to mention that for this video, I'm actually not going to discuss Renaissance choral music. I think that is its own animal, and I'll discuss that in a future video. So I'll only be discussing choral works pretty much from 1600 forward. And as always, I'll be going in alphabetical order. And so the first composer in the alphabet today is Johann Sebastian Bach. And what a place to start. I've talked in my other videos about how you have these epic groups of works within a composer's output that almost overshadows everyone else. Like, for example, with symphonies, you have Beethoven and Mahler. With orchestral tone poems, you have Richard Strauss. With chamber music, there's Brahms, also Schubert, and Beethoven, of course. And then solo piano music, you have Bach, Beethoven, Chopin. Solo vocal work, you have to look, of course, at Schubert. And really, when we come to choral music, I think in terms of the volume of output, Bach is really the giant. Part of this was because of his job. He was the music director at the St. Thomas Church in Leipzig for much of his life. And he composed weekly cantatas for performance in the services. And then beyond that, he also wrote these humongous monumental works. The first one I'm going to discuss is the St. Matthew Passion, one of the biggest, longest works in the choral repertoire. Performances on average are around 3 hours. Sometimes a period performance can get it down more to like 2.5 hours. Passion, by the way, that comes from the Latin passio, which is suffering. And this narrative that it depicts is the suffering of Christ from the time of the Last Supper until his crucifixion. And in the St. Matthew Passion, we have that depicted by the Gospel of Matthew. And yeah, it's a humongous work, a real event whenever you have a performance of the St. Matthew Passion. It actually uses 2 choruses, 2 orchestras. You have an evangelist, the tenor, who is basically a narrator of the story. Then you also have Jesus, who's depicted by a bass. And you have Pontius Pilate and various other characters. And they're all telling the story. And they use recitative, which is Music that mimics dialogue. You see this, for example, in Mozart operas. And then in between that, you have solo arias as well as choruses, which in the St. Matthew Passion are your more traditional Lutheran chorales. There are these larger choral numbers that bookend the two parts. Maybe most famously is the opening, very solemn and grand, on the words, Kommt ihr Töchter, helft mir klagen. Come ye daughters, help me lament. So that kind of sets the tone for the work. It's a really beautiful, monumental work. It takes a lot of patience to get through on one hearing. It is obviously very long. So now let's talk about recordings. My top choice for the St. Matthew Passion is a more traditional modern instrument version. This is Eugen Jochum conducting the Netherlands Radio Chorus and the Concertgebouw. Comes from 1965. Very good vintage Philips sound, nice warmth, nice opulence, and it's a traditional warm-hearted performance, but it's not like overly slow. It doesn't drag. For example, that first chorus, it moves ahead very solemnly, but it doesn't feel, shall we say, trudgy. Jochum, you're going to hear his name a lot today. He was one of the great conductors of these large choral pieces, especially the ones that are more spiritual. And he guides this work very naturally, beautiful spirituality. The soloists are excellent. The evangelist is Ernst Hayfliger, very expressive tenor. Walter Berry, a very warm-hearted Jesus. One of the things I love about this recording is whenever Jesus is singing the recitatives, there's this stillness. You have the string section creating what we call the halo effect, these held high chords, and it sounds really sumptuous and beautiful here. So I think this is an excellent place to start for this monumental work. Now, if you do want to hear a recording that has maybe a little bit more kick to it, a little bit more giddy-up, you might say, we have another modern instrument recording from 1994 conducted by Helmut Rilling. This is with his Gechinger Kantorei Stuttgart, as well as the Bach Collegium Stuttgart. And right from that opening, the Kommt ihr Töchter, it's got a little bit more impetus to it, more the dramatic effect. This is beautifully recorded, beautifully sung. The presence and the clarity in both the chorus, who are very well drilled, enunciate the text. They really tell the story in all the chorales. The soloists as well. One of them, the bass soloist, is Thomas Quastoff, who, of course, was one of the foremost leader and soloist singers, and all guided by Rilling very naturally and in beautiful sound. So a great way to learn this work as well. Now, going back to or I should say maybe forward, but it's actually back in time. But I want to discuss now some period performance recordings, starting with the very first one from Nicholas Harnoncourt from 1970. This is with the Regensburger Domspatzen, the King's College Choir, as well as the Musicus Concentus Wien. And he did do a later one from, I think it was around 2001 or 2003, which is very good as well, very well recorded. But I prefer this earlier one. It uses a boys chorus, boys sopranos in the chorus, which was the tradition in Bach's time. And I think it lends a little bit more of this kind of reverence to the piece. More solemnity. Everything here sounds very natural, nothing forced upon the music, nothing pushed, and it's just a really good kind of full sounding but still a period performance. Among the soloists, I want to point out Paul Eswood. He does a great job on that, probably the most famous aria in the work, Erbarme dich, mein Gott, have mercy, my Lord. beautifully expressive aria that he does very well. So that's an excellent choice if you're investigating period performances. A little more than a decade later, in 1984, we had this one, Philippe Herreweghe, and La Chapelle Royale and the Collegium Vocal Ghent. And this one, as you often see with Herreweghe's recordings, there's a nice warmth and beauty to it. It accentuates the solemnity, I would say. It's a little bit more gentle, and for this work in particular, I think that's an excellent way to go. It really draws you into the story, and it just sounds beautiful too. Now, he did do one in the late 90s, and I'll show that one here, with the same forces as well. And this one is very well recorded. I would say it has a little bit more crispness to it. And you could make arguments for either one. I feel like personally I like a little bit the naturalness of this one, but don't let me dissuade you from investigating both. There's a lot of debate between people over which one they prefer. I get a little bit more of the feeling of the solemnity from this one. And then, just a few years later, in 1988, we had another period performance icon, John Eliot Gardiner, with the Monteverdi Choir and the English Baroque soloists. And this one is more the dramatic effect. He takes that opening chorus more swiftly. Everything's really articulated. The musicianship is immaculate, the attention to detail. And I would say for this work, the sort of the drama of the narrative of the passion, this recording is in addition to being on the quick side, it's also, I might say, a little bit more sparing emotively, which for some might be a better thing. It's like saying less with more, so to speak. It's really the opposite of those more romantic readings, and everything is just recorded and played and sung so beautifully that I wouldn't want to be without this one either. And then coming closer to our own time, actually just a few years ago, 2021, we have this version from Raphael Pichon with his group Pygmalion. As you can tell, they're French. And this one is, it's very dramatic as well, but also has this lushness to both the singing and the playing. It's also very nuanced as well as dramatic. Recorded very well, wonderful presence. So compared to, say, a recording like Herreweghe, this one is more, I would say, on the dramatic side, but it's very captivating as well. Okay, now let's go back now to the modern romantic style, and most of you who know St. Matthew Passion recordings will probably know this one is coming. The Otto Klemperer recording with the Philharmonia Choir and Orchestra from 1961. This is kind of the old traditional classic. And I will say that for me, this one has always been a little bit of a challenge, right from that opening chorus, especially having performed it before and just knowing how the music goes. I always feel like it's like the carriage driver pulling the horse reins, because it almost feels like it's getting slower as it goes. But really that's more Klemperer's just very disciplined steadiness. So it can be a challenge, especially in a work this long. But I will say at the same time, there's this majesty and grandeur when you listen to the entire thing, which in this recording, I think it's closer to like about 3.5 hours. It really is powerful in its own way. It's like this big, long outpouring of sound. The Philharmonia chorus, they sing with passion. The soloists are wonderful. You have Peter Pears as the evangelist. so expressive. The dramatic Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau singing Jesus. You have Elizabeth Schwarzkopf and Christa Ludwig among the soloists. So it's famous for a reason, and it also has, I think, its place in the recording canon, just for that monumental vision that Klemperer brought to it, even if it being so slow that it can take some getting used to. Now, for another modern instrument version from just a couple years earlier, 1959, that is not quite so, you might say, monumental and romantic, I recommend this one. Mogens Wöldike with the Vienna Chamber Choir and Vienna State Opera Orchestra. It's got nice sound, nice presence to it for its age. And it's just this nice, warm-hearted, modern instrument, kind of, romantic sounding version, but not overly done. Very good soloists as well. So I would say this is sort of a traditional version that you also should investigate if you like that style. Then, going back further, now we have more of the unbridled romantic tradition, you might say. Wilhelm Furtwängler with the Vienna Singakademie and the Vienna Philharmonic from 1954. This is actually a live recording. It's recorded fairly well. The soloists definitely come across very clearly. It's only in the choruses that it's a little bit muddy. I remember hearing this recording in Tower Records back in the 90s, and I was kind of floored by what I was hearing. I was like, they let you do Bach like this? Because I just really loved it. It's so warm-hearted, beautifully and sensitively phrased. Every choral number, and the soloists are so expressive. Like, for example, Anton der Matte is the evangelist. He's also the tenor soloist. There's one solo that he does with the choir. Ich will bei meinem Jesu wachen. I will stand watch with my Jesus, which is really beautifully done. Very, very, very sublime, really. A younger Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau is again Jesus. And it's just I loved it. For me, the telling of this dramatic story, it sort of lends itself to, in a sense, to that romantic tradition, as long as it's, tastefully done. And I think that is what you get here. It is heavily cut, so it actually comes in at only 2.5 hours for that reason. One other of the performers I want to mention is Willy Boskowski, the longtime concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic. He plays that violin solo in that aria Erbarme dich. The violin sort of trades off with the alto, and that's really, really heart-melting in this version as well. However, if we really want to talk about romantic versions of the St. Matthew Passion, I have to go back to this one. Another live recording, 1939, Willem Mengelberg with the Amsterdam Toonkunst Choir and the Concertgebouw. This one, you get the full romantic rubato treatment. And I know that for some people, it's like, la 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 la, they can't stand it. And it's too anachronistic. But I'll give another personal story on this one. I back in the days before we had, streaming and internet, really, in the 90s, I bought a version of this from a store in Germany. And I was in the airport, and I was listening to it on my CD, I don't know what it was called, a Walkman or whatever, my portable CD player. I actually listened to the entire thing in one hearing in the airport. I was transfixed by it. I really felt like it was so involved and so passionate. They've been performing this every year for 40 years. So they obviously knew it, and everything, like the chorales, for example, everything, every note meant something. Even if it doesn't sound like your traditional, more, I guess you might say, on the side of being metronomic as opposed to having flexible tempos. It obviously, everything was geared towards the meaning of the story and the telling of the story. The soloist too, the evangelist, Karl Erb, very expressive. Erbarme dich, I have to mention again, the alto soloist Ilona Durigo, as well as the violin solo. I can't remember who it was. I'm sure it wasn't Hermann Krebers, because I think this was a little before his time. But in any case, that is just for me, it's just gorgeous. I think you even hear people in the audience sobbing at the time. But that's the point, is that they were telling this story in a way that was emotionally palpable and relatable. And if you don't respond to that, fine. But if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not a person, if you've gathered by now, I don't believe in strict orthodoxy in music. The whole point is entertainment, as well as, reaching people in different ways. And if you like it, then it's good art. That's the whole point. The sound is not horrible. I mean, it is, especially in the chorus numbers, it's very kind of muddy. But it's clear enough to where you can enjoy it. That opening chorus is molto dramatic. Right away, I think you'll be able to tell whether you like this recording or not from hearing that. All right, so that is the St. Matthew Passion. Now let's talk about one of the iconic pieces of Western music, the Mass in B minor. Now you might say, wait a second, I thought we just did. Well, Bach wrote more than one. This pillar of Western art is actually a work that he put together at the end of his life, kind of stitched from things that he'd written previous decades. It's a traditional Latin Mass, and unlike the St. Matthew Passion, which was telling a story with a narrative, with characters and the soloist telling the story, this is really more of your sort of abstract devotional work. It feels like this, like a Gothic cathedral. It's just this outpouring of spirituality is the best way I can put it. And really beautiful in that way. And for this one, my top choice is actually a period performance, probably the most celebrated one. John Eliot Gardner with the Monteverdi Choir and English Baroque soloists from 1985. And this recording has that immaculate musicianship, immaculate clarity, beauty of tone, beauty of sound. And I think the approach really works in this piece especially. You're kind of given this very natural, maybe I might say not emotional rendition that allows you to just take in the majesty as well as the solemnity of the work. This is no cold fish, even though it's immaculately performed. There's lots of energy and passion as well as a sort of humility and solemnity in the quieter sections with excellent soloists. Now, if you do want the more big-boned version, then maybe surprisingly, my choice, after what I just said about the St. Matthew Passion, is Otto Klemperer, with the BBC chorus and Philharmonia from 1967, very well recorded. For me, the Klemperer approach works actually better in this work than in the St. Matthew Passion. I think of the St. Matthew Passion as a little bit more diverse, telling a story, whereas in this work, I think Klemperer's approach of being disciplined really has a majestic effect in this work. That final chorus, the Dona Nobis Pacem, is just beautifully powerful. The chorus sings wonderfully. They have full tone, but they also have clarity. There is a chorus, Cum Sancto Spiritu, which is fairly virtuosic for chorus. It sounds fantastic in the Gardner recording as well. But also in this recording, they sing with fullness of tone, and it's very exciting. Wonderful playing from the Philharmonia, especially the brass. Excellent soloist as well. So for a larger, big-boned performance, I think the Klemperer is an excellent choice for the Mass in B minor. As is this one from 1977, Sir Neville Marriner and the Academy and Chorus of St. Martin in the Fields. They're sort of known as more of a middle ground between the old romantic approach and the period performances, and you get that here. It's not too fast, not too slow, not too heavy, not too light. It kind of feels just right, like what, Goldilocks, I guess. but there's a warmth and power to it as well that really works in this piece. Again, that Dona Nobis Pacem at the end is very powerful. Beautiful sound from the St. Martin in the Field Orchestra as well. So this is an excellent choice. Now, going back to period performances, I want to mention this one from 1997. This is Diego Fasolis and the Swiss Radio Chorus with the Sonatori della Gioiosa Marca. And this is just a gorgeous version, just immaculately sung and played, nice clarity, beautiful solemnity in the softer sections, but also energetic as well, just very stylish, and another beautiful period performance that I think this sort of, you might say, no frills approach, like no drama, it really works in this piece. As does this one from 2006. This is with Jas van Velhoven and the Netherlands Bach Society. This one also has wonderful clarity, wonderful sound, a little bit more warmth to the sound. I would say maybe a little bit more of a smooth approach, which is really beautiful. Wonderful clarity as well, and beautiful playing from the instruments. So can't go wrong with this one either. And then finally, among period performances, I want to mention this one from 2009, John Butt and the Dunedin Consort and Players. Now, this one's a little different. This one is one voice per part. This was actually something that was pioneered by Joshua Rifkin in the early 80s. And in this recording, there's this wonderful presence and energy that they bring, a little bit more of an intimate experience that kind of brings the music alive. A wonderful rich tone, lushness to the sound, so it never sounds too sparse. But it's really fresh and a great way to hear the work. Now, before I leave the Mass in B minor, I want to go back further in time to some of the more larger romantic recordings, starting with this classic from 1961, Karl Richter and the Munich Bach Orchestra and Chorus. Richter actually served as an organist at the St. Thomas Church. He was steeped in the tradition, and he uses boy sopranos, which was the tradition in Bach's time. And I think that adds an element of solemnity and reverence to this, especially to this particular work that really works. It still does have energy in the faster sections, wonderful articulation. The choir sings really well. They're very well drilled. And I think for this work, it works in bringing across that kind of spiritual majesty, you might say. Very well recorded as well. And then, going back to 1959, we have this version. Hermann Scherchen and the Vienna Academy Chamber Choir and the Vienna State Opera Orchestra. Now, I want to say something about this one. I talked about Klemperer as being the romantic tradition. The irony of that is, we think of him that way because of the large modern instruments and the slower tempos. But Klemperer was very disciplined in the way he paced things. He actually did not see himself as a romantic. For a real truer romantic interpretation, I think this one has a flexibility to it. It's a little bit more of a soft-grained approach. Very good sound for its time. Incidentally, this is the Tara version. You can also get it on MCA. Tara is actually a remastering recording label that has done a lot of historical recordings very well. A lot of the Furtwängler recordings I've recommended have been Tara, and actually was founded by Scherchen's daughter, Miriam. You can also find his Art of Fugue orchestration on the Tara label. But in this recording, there's a little bit more elasticity, you might say. It's beautifully poignant. For example, the slow Crucifixus For me, some people will say it's overly romantic, and I understand that, but for me, it's very touching. As well as energetic in the faster sections. The one thing I would say, the soloists are very good. The bass soloist kind of scoops a bit, but beyond that, it's a good sounding recording, and it's a lovely approach that might even for some be sort of a gateway if you found the Mass in B minor to be a little bit too maybe austere and monumental. Maybe kind of humanizes it in a way. And then finally, another romantic tradition performance is this one, live from 1950, Herbert von Karajan with the Vienna Singverein and Vienna Symphony. And when you get to track 2 and you hear a duet with Elizabeth Schwarzkopf and Kathleen Ferrier, at least for me, your ears will perk up a bit. It's a grand, romantic, powerful performance. It's a little bit muddy, both in the sound and in the choral sections, the faster, articulated, like the Cum Sancto Spiritu, for example. It doesn't have the best articulation maybe in the world, but the reason to listen to this one is just that feeling of majesty and grandeur. Karajan paces everything beautifully. The final Dona Nobis Pacem is so just powerful. Just what a way to end the work. And before that, you have the Agnus Dei alto solo with Kathleen Ferrier, which is just poignantly done, beautifully accompanied by Karajan. The sound is not the best. And a little detail, it is missing the first minute of the opening Kyrie. So actually, I'll tell you something I did a couple of decades ago when I first got this recording. I actually spliced in the Georges Enesky recording, the first minute of that one, and it actually worked. It sounded pretty seamless. So a little splicing trick you can try on your own. But in any case, I did want to include this one as a great example of the more romantic tradition for this work. All right, so those are, I guess you could say, the two biggies, the two big monumental ones. But we do have another Passion, the St. John Passion. This was the first of the Passions that Bach wrote in his Leipzig years. And it's about 2/3 of the length of the St. Matthew Passion, so it's a little bit more digestible, you might say. It's also a little bit more, I would say, direct. The drama is told a little bit more directly. Just like the St. Matthew Passion, you have the evangelist, you have Jesus, you have like Pontius Pilate, and then the chorales and the different arias. There's a beautiful chorale that the penultimate one is Ruht wohl, rest well. This really lovely kind of slow, beautiful chorus. So this is a wonderful work as well. And my top choice for this one is Helmut Rilling with the Geckige Kantorei Stuttgart, as well as the Bach Collegium Stuttgart from 1984. This is his earlier recording. And what I love about this one is the telling of the story, the drama, the pathos, the attention to text that you hear with the choir. There's this section where that depicts Jesus' death. Es ist vollbracht, it is finished. Very beautifully paced by Rilling here, wonderfully done. So I think for the telling of the story, and as well as the performance quality and the sound quality, this is a great way to get to know the St. John Passion. Now that is a modern instrument recording that has Baroque sensitivity, you might say. For an actual period performance, we have again John Eliot Gardner, again with the Monteverdi Choir and the English Baroque soloists from 1986. And this is a work that I think is really in Gardner's wheelhouse. He was always good at the more kind of dramatic, fast-paced stuff, like you hear in that opening chorale, for example. Very exciting. The Monteverdi Choir is just phenomenal. Listen, for example. There's that movement in the second part where it's Lasset Lasset uns da nicht zerteilen, let us not rend it, where the soldiers are feverishly taking possession of Jesus' clothing. It's got these like fast syncopated rhythms, really, really well articulated here. Wonderful soloist as well. That Es ist vollbracht section, it has this slow alto aria that Michael Chance sings beautifully here. So a very immaculate, beautiful, dramatic version. Now, going back to modern instrument versions, I want to recommend this one from a famous evangelist slash conductor, Peter Schreier. This is from 1988. With the Leipzig Radio Choir as well as the Staatskapelle Dresden. And this one's, it's very, very beautiful. It's a little bit more intimate sounding to me. Very, very intense. The choir, obviously they've been drilled on the meaning of the text. They put a lot of emphasis on it. And it's actually a little bit more separated in the chorales than we're used to. But Schreier, being an evangelist, I'm sure he emphasized the meaning for all the chorales. They also sing with wonderful character. Schreier himself is the evangelist. By the way, he was also the evangelist on that Rilling recording that I mentioned earlier. So he's wonderfully expressive, as are the other soloists. So this is a beautiful, warm, modern instrument version. And then finally, if you really want to go towards warm modern instrument versions, we have this one from 1971. Benjamin Britten conducting a version in English with the Wandsworth School Boys Choir and the English Chamber Orchestra. This one's just a really warm, touching version. It's not as dramatic or incisive, I would say, as Gardner or Rilling, but it's got this beautiful solemnity to it. I think the boys' choir adds a little bit to that in the chorales. Britten's partner, Peter Pierce, is the evangelist, and he's phenomenal. So for a sort of more warm, romantic approach that I think brings across the emotions of the work in a different way, but it's also valuable, I highly recommend this one as well. All right, so that leaves one more kind of large Bach choral work, and that's the Christmas Oratorio. This is a work that's in 6 parts. It runs about 2.5 hours, and it depicts, as you might guess, the birth of Jesus and celebrating the birth of Jesus. So it's much more joyous than the Passions. Again, we have the familiar tenor evangelist. We don't have Jesus this time. He was a little young, so he couldn't talk. But we do have other soloists that are telling the story. It's a little bit more solo-driven, I would say, than the, like, for example, the Mass in B minor. It starts out with this chorale, Jauchzet frohlocket, rejoice, be joyful. So it's more of a sunny work. And my choice for this one is a modern instrument version from 1966. Karl Münchener and the Lübeck Kantorei and the Stuttgart Chamber Orchestra. Beautifully warm. It's modern instruments, but it's not too slow. It has a nice pace to it. The solos are wonderfully done. Wonderful solo quartet. Ellie Ameling, Helen Watts, Peter Pierce, Tom Krause. Wonderful Bach oratorio singers, and they bring that charm and richness to these solos. Wonderful playing from the orchestra as well, especially the trumpets. And it uses a boys' choir in the chorus, again, as the tradition was in Bach's time. And I'll be honest, when I hear that, it sounds a little bit more Christmassy. So I think that goes well. So a really nice, warm-hearted, sunny version, but also with energy. All right, now let's talk about some of Bach's shorter works. Probably the most famous of which is the Magnificat. This one runs a little bit under half an hour. If you're getting your feet wet in Bach, it might be better to sample something shorter like this. And this is a good one. It's really rich writing, very virtuosic for the choir and the orchestra. it's literally magnifying God's glory, and it sounds like that. It's very energetic and entertaining work. And for this one, I have to go back to John Eliot Gardner and the Monteverdi Choir with the English Baroque soloist. They bring that energy, that articulation, that excitement. The brass playing is wonderful. This also comes coupled with the version of Cantata 51, Jauchzet Gott in allen Landen, that I recommended with Emma Kirkby. So it's a wonderful coupling of a disc, and I think you can't go wrong for this Magnificat. Now let's talk about some cantatas. Bach wrote over 200 of these. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, his job was to write music for the church every week. Can you imagine being a church member, hearing music every week that's going to be performed for centuries? I just can't imagine. They probably had no idea, but I would imagine they must have had some inkling given what they were hearing. So I'm not going to cover all 200. I'm just going to mention a couple of the most famous ones. Probably the most famous one is Cantata BWV 140. Wachet auf, ruft uns die Stimme. Awake calls the voice to us. And this is a fairly positive, sunny work. It's got the Wachet auf motif. Bum ba ba bum ba dum be dum be dum be da dum ba dum be dum, and you hear that at various points. Most famously in the central chorale, Zion hört die Wächter singen. Zion hears the watchmen singing, which is just with the tenors and the basses singing. It's a very beautiful chorale, and then you also have these duets between soprano and bass. Where the soprano is the soul and the bass is Jesus, and they're fusing. I've sung these duets before, and when I hear them, I often think of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte with Papageno and Papagena. Who knows? Maybe Mozart was inspired by this work, but they're really cute and lovely. And for this work, I recommend a modern instrument recording, very beautifully warm-hearted, with Raymond Leppard conducting the London Voices with the English Chamber Orchestra, 1981. A very good sound, nice and warm. I love that opening to the Zion hört movement, the warm string sound. And then you have the soprano soloist Ellie Ameling just sounding beautifully angelic as the soul who fuses with Jesus. So this is an excellent way to get to know this cantata. Now, I want to mention maybe you might say the next most popular, or at least one of them, Cantata 147. Herz und Mund und Tat und Leben, heart and mouth and deed and life. And this is a very reverential work. It's a little longer. It has 10 movements. The opening movement is particularly well crafted and spirited. This one also has a famous motif, Jesu joy of man's desiring. You know how it goes. And that one is featured at various points, including a central chorale. And for this one, I recommend a group that has recorded just about every Bach choral work. This is the Bach Collegium Japan, conducted by Masaki Suzuki, recorded in 1999. Wonderful, clear digital sound, and they're just immaculate, as they are in all their Bach performances. Just crisp and beautifully smooth. Nice warmth, which I think works in the Jesu joy of man's desiring chorale, for example. Yeah, an excellent way to get to know this work. However, I also want to mention, before we leave cantatas, a set of recordings that just about, I'm not sure if it's maybe a little under the 200 number, but it's most of them. This comes from the Bach guru, Helmut Rilling. These were recorded or collected from recordings made in the 70s and 80s. Very good sound, fantastic singing. Most of this is with his Cantate Stuttgart as well as the Bach Collegium Stuttgart. Wonderful soloists. The important thing here, I think, is not just the quality of the singing. There's a mixture of, again, these are modern instruments, but with Baroque sensibility. So there's a crispness as well as a warmth and sensible tempos, you might say. But Rilling really put an emphasis on the meaning of the text. And trust me, he knew every single note of these cantatas and what Bach was meaning. Rilling actually left us just a month ago. He passed away, and he leaves behind an incredible legacy of Bach musicianship as well as scholarship. He is a renowned teacher on both sides of the Atlantic, as actually around the world, really. So it's really a great loss, but a wonderful legacy that he left behind. So, Herr Rilling, vielen Dank. All right. So that is the Bach cantatas, and actually I have one more work to discuss, or set of works, the motets. There are 6 of these, and in many ways I think this may be one of the best ways to approach Bach choral music. These are really pure choral works. They range from about 10 to 20 minutes in length, and so it's a cappella. For the most part, there may be some sparse instrumentation in some of them. It harkens back to a tradition, the motets, that goes back to the Renaissance. But with Bach, he brings it to this level of intricacy. For example, Singet dem Herrn, Sing unto the Lord, really virtuosic for choir. I've sung it a few times, even sang it with Helmut Rilling, actually, and you really have to be on your game. And then there's maybe the most famous, Jesu meine Freude, Jesus my joy. Really beautiful work. One of Bach's, one of his greatest compositions. Very devotional, rich and colorful, beautiful work. And for this one, I recommend John Eliot Gardner with the Monteverdi Choir. And this was recorded in 1980 on Erato this time. And they bring that immaculate musicianship, that clarity. In these days, they were using a little bit more color and vibrato than they did later on. And I actually kind of like it. I like that marriage of the clarity and the opulence. The recording is also nicely reverberant. And just a wonderful way to get to know these works, immaculately conducted by Gardner as well. I do want to mention, though, one more recording from the motets, and that's from the Trinity College Choir, conducted by Richard Marlowe in 1988. And they bring that kind of Anglican church tradition. Again, the motet tradition goes back to the Renaissance, so it's a little bit appropriate sounding. I think they bring this kind of simplicity and youthfulness to these works, that it kind of has that heavenly beauty. So not as maybe dynamic in terms of the the interpretation and the depth of sound as with Gardner, but I think it's an approach that really works for these pieces. So this is a lovely disc as well. All right, so that is Bach. Now we come to Ludwig van Beethoven and his colossal masterwork, the Missa Solemnis, also known as the triathlon for choruses, probably orchestra as well. I've never played in the orchestra, but I can tell you, singing in the chorus, this thing is a workout. I had no voice left after I sang this. It's just this. It's from his later period. It's a little bit more mercurial than a lot of Beethoven. It's very jarring and rhythmic and dramatic. Just this outpouring of emotion and spirituality that it can be like, I might say, like the Mahler Eighth, for example. It can be a work that is difficult to get into, difficult to get a grasp of. You kind of have to just listen to it, but it has this obvious monumental effect. And As you might expect, just about every great Beethoven conductor is going to want to, make a recording. And so let's go through the different versions. My top choice is Eugen Jochum with the Netherlands Radio Chorus and the Concertgebouw from 1970. And Jochum, as I've said, he's just one of the great choral conductors, especially that spirituality that he brings to it. This nice gentleness, but also the power. And with this chorus, they just sing the daylights out of this work. They have nice richness of tone, dexterity, and fullness, and clarity as well. So they really tackle this very difficult work extremely well. And then I might say the piece de résistance is the violin solo. The 10-minute violin solo that ends the Sanctus, the Benedictus. The Concertgebouw concertmaster Hermann Krebers is just sublime in that. I've sung his praises many times. He's my top recommendation for the Brahms Violin Concerto. He does a wonderful solo in the Kondratian Scheherazade, for example, the Rimsky-Korsakov. He's pretty much money whenever you have Hermann Krebers in a recording, and he does a wonderful job here as well. The whole thing is just really fantastic, very well recorded as well. However, there are a ton of great recordings of this work. Next, I want to mention the version from Herbert von Karajan with the Berlin Philharmonic and the Vienna Singverein. Hot off the heels of the classic symphony set that he did in the 60s. This came from 1966. And Karajan brings that power, that gravitas, and also a flexibility, very nuanced as well. It's a very devotional reading. Karajan, like Jochum, was also wonderful with choirs. You're going to see him throughout this video as well. However, the first selling point that you usually have to mention with this recording is the soloists. You have Gundula Janowitz, Christa Ludwig, Fritz Wunderlich, and Walter Berry. Star-studded cast, and they really bring it with the richness and the power that they do not disappoint. The solo singing is very prominent in this work, so they do wonderfully, and very well recorded. So this is an excellent version. And then I want to recommend going back to the same forces we just talked about before, the Concertgebouw and Netherlands Radio Chorus, this time conducted by Leonard Bernstein in 1978. This is taken out of a couple of live performances stitched together. It's got very good sound. And again, as I mentioned, the chorus and the orchestra are fantastic. Again, you have Hermann Krebers and the Benedictus. But Bernstein brings that rhythmic intensity, that drama and pathos and the spirituality. Same thing that he brought to the Beethoven Ninth, incidentally. So you almost think that Bernstein was born to do a great Missa Solemnis, and he was. This is a fantastic version. He did another excellent version in New York, actually, in the 60s on Sony that is also wonderful. I have a certain preference for this one. I think it has a little bit more depth and power to it, but they're both excellent. Now, going from the sort of more emotive, outwardly emotive to the more kind of stoic, we have another great Beethoven, of course, Otto Klemperer. This is one of those classic accounts from 1965 with the New Philharmonia Orchestra and Chorus. Excellent sound. The choir has nice depth and fullness and power. Excellent soloist. And as you might expect with Klemperer, it's a little bit more disciplined. There's this kind of majesty that comes with the way he approached the music, but there's a cumulative effect. For example, in the Gloria, it's very disciplined, but the climax at the end is just really glorious. So it's an approach that works well, a little bit more austere than some of the others, but I think it's one that really comes across powerfully for this work. Now, going again back now to something more obviously sort of emotive, you might say, in romantic approach, we have Jascha Horenstein. This is a recording from 1961. It's actually in mono, but it's fairly clear and full, and not. You wish it could have a fuller stereo sound, but for whatever reason, they decided to do it in mono. It's with the BBC Symphony and Chorus. And Horenstein did really pour his heart into this. He even requested unpaid piano rehearsals because he was really wanting this to be fantastic. And you can tell he puts that devotion that we're used to hearing from Horenstein. Every phrase is caressed. The climaxes, the way he builds them to this overwhelming effect, and the Gloria and in the Credo, the chorus just sings their guts out. They're totally with him and passionate. This is a really wonderful version, and if you love the Missa Solemnis, you should at least sample this once. Now, going to, believe it or not, for this work, we also have period performances. And I'm not sure if it was the first, but one of the first was John Eliot Gardner with the Monteverdi Choir and Orchestre Révolutionnaire et Romantique in 1989. And yes, it doesn't have that large opulence and power, but first of all, what it does have is the Monteverdi Choir. And they almost make it sound too easy. It almost feels like it shouldn't sound this easy, but they bring this immaculate clarity, and they're just able to navigate all the difficulty. But they do it also with passion and energy, so it's not like cold. It doesn't have quite, the opulence of the large, majestic versions, but it's really dramatic, and it's wonderful to hear it with such clarity and beauty. And for some people, it might even be a gateway to what I said is a difficult work, a really challenging one. So they kind of conquer it, you might say, in a sense. The Sanctus, the slow Sanctus, it's a little bit more flowing in Gardner's tempo, but it's very eloquent. So it's a different approach, but one that I think sheds new light on this work. As does this other period performance from Philippe Herwegh, with the Collegium Vocal Ghent and the Orchestre des Champs-Élysées. This is from 1995. Now with this one, as we expect with Herwegh, there's this gentleness and beauty and solemnity that he brings, which is really something for a work like this one, which is so kind of jarring. It's almost kind of strange to hear it sound so beautiful, but like I was saying with the Gardner, it kind of brings another element to the work, maybe even serves as a gateway for some. It still has energy and incision, so it doesn't sound like overly beautified, but definitely that element is what I think this particular recording brings to it, and I think this one is also a valuable choice. Now, a couple of historic recordings I want to mention. One is for a giant of conducting who really he was known for this work, and that is Arturo Toscanini. This was a work that famously intimidated Wilhelm Furtwängler. He actually thought that it was a better work than could possibly be played, but Toscanini just went for it. And I think this live recording from 1940 is his most exciting, with his NBC Symphony and the Westminster Choir. And yeah, it's just hair-raising, spine-tingling, whatever adjective you want to use. It's just damn exciting. His command of the structure that allows the climaxes to come through, but also the solemn moments. The Sanctus is very poignantly done. That feeling of tranquility that Beethoven wanted, you definitely hear that here. The soloists are fantastic. Zinka Milanov, Bruna Castagna, Jussi Björling, and Alexander Kipnis. So that's a star-studded solo quartet that sing very passionately. The choir sings very passionately. The sound is obviously a little dim, being a live performance from 1940, but everything comes across fairly clearly. And this is just a really hair-raising performance that you definitely need to hear if you love this work. However, I want to mention one more from another man known for Beethoven, Bruno Walter. And this is the younger Walter, slightly younger, than 1948, with, again, the Westminster Choir, but this time the New York Philharmonic, a live performance. And the thing about Walter is he brings in this is the younger Walter, and I think a lot of people who have heard his later stereo recordings maybe think of him as more gentle, the warm-hearted, which he definitely had throughout his career. We often think of his Beethoven Pastoral Symphony, for example. But when you listen to the younger Walter, especially in these live recordings, he could be quite exciting, and this recording is just volcanic. I would say even compared to Toscanini, there's a feeling of spontaneity, which really works in this piece especially. Also has fantastic soloists led by Eleanor Stieber and Nan Merriman. The one downside is the sound quality. Actually, even compared to the earlier Toscanini, the sound quality here is pretty dreadful. Actually, it's fairly fuzzy. It's not very clear, but the performance is so powerful that once you get past that, if you can get past that, I think this is a version you should check out, especially if you love the work. It just brings that, the combination of the fire and the humanity and the solemnity. It's like it all comes together in this interpretation. So a wonderful version. All right. So that is Beethoven. Now we move to our next composer in the alphabet, the French romantic Hector Berlioz, and his humongous Grand Messe des Morts, Grand Messe of the Dead, also commonly known as his Requiem. And this really was grand. It was written actually for 400 performers at the time. Most of the time when people talk about this work, they center on the tuba mirum, where all the sound on stage kind of coalesces, including 4 brass bands at the corners of the stage to produce this orgasm of sound. It's the best way I can describe it. It's just enormous. However, despite that, most of the work is actually fairly reflective. There's only one soloist. It's not a solo quartet. You have a tenor soloist that sings in the Sanctus beautifully above the choir, and then you have the final Agnus Dei. So it has a fairly tranquil ending. So there's different sides to the work. And my top choice for this one, I think, brings out both those qualities. And that is a very recent recording from 2019, a live recording from St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Conducted by John Nelson with the London Philharmonic Chorus as well as the Philharmonia Chorus and Orchestra. And that acoustic is just enormous. You can just feel that cathedral acoustic going back and forth. Very reverberant. Normally I may ding this for not being ideally clear, and particularly in a choral work where you have text. But I think here it works. I think that majesty and that opulence. I believe this recording had somewhere around 300 performers, so somewhat close to what Berlioz intended. And it really works. You have the powerful moments, but then you also have the beauty of the tranquil moments. For example, that Sanctus, beautifully sung by tenor Michael Spires. And then when you get to the Agnus Dei and the ending, you really have this feeling of something monumental has just occurred, maybe partly because it was a live performance as well. I think this is just a fabulous recording and a great way to appreciate this work. I do want to mention one more recording. This one, very much a historical recording, recorded during World War II in France, led by Jean Fournet, with the Choral Émile Passani and the Paris Grand Radio Orchestra. I believe this was also a live recording. It's actually surprisingly clear for its age. It was, I can't remember where exactly, I think it was in a cathedral as well, but because of the miking, you actually hear everybody, like the chorus, a little bit more clearly. Ironically enough, actually, you're kind of missing that opulence. But the reason I recommend this one is just the passion and the commitment and the insight that they bring to this music. You can hear it. There's just this attention and nuance that I think for this work, like I said, it's not just the big loud stuff, but it also has a lot of other things to say, and that really comes across in this recording. So I recommend this one as an alternative choice as well. All right, so next we come to 20th century American composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein, and his little masterwork. It's only about 20 minutes long, the Chichester Psalms. This was commissioned actually for performance at the Chichester Cathedral in England, hence the title. And it really displays Bernstein's, on the one hand, his rhythmic agility, a lot of jarring rhythms, but also the beautiful, warm, lyrical side to Bernstein as well. Particularly, there's that central psalm that is sung by a boy soprano, which is really beautiful and calming. It's a piece that's written in Hebrew, which is rare for choral repertoire. And for this one, my top choice is, surprise, surprise, Bernstein. Really, it's a question of which Bernstein. It's such a gift to have this conductor, conducting his own works, because he had that gift for rhythmic intensity, as well as the spiritual side for the more lyrical parts. Both recordings are excellent. This is the one from 1977 with the Vienna Youth Choir and the Israel Philharmonic. And I like the warmth of this performance. It's not quite as detailed and clear, or maybe as quite as solid, I guess, as the earlier one in New York. But I think that spiritual side, especially in the final movement, comes across more beautifully to my ears in this recording. But like I said, they're both excellent. Okay, now we come to one of the biggies, the kind of giant choral masterworks from Johannes Brahms, his German Requiem, Ein Deutsches Requiem. Now this one is a little bit of a different animal, maybe compared to most other liturgical pieces, especially requiems. It doesn't have as much of the fire and the brimstone. It's more consoling. Brahms wrote it in German so that it would be more relatable. He called it a human requiem. It comes out of the German Luther Bible, the text does. And much of it is. It's more consoling, and it has that Brahmsian warmth, those beautiful, comforting harmonies. However, it does have its exciting moments as well. Bach utilizes a lot of that Bach counterpoint, fugal counterpoint. You have a wonderful fugue that ends the third movement, and then especially the sixth movement is the most fiery one. That's the one where the choir is practically yelling, "Tod, wo ist dein Stachel?" Death, where is thy sting? That's a powerful movement, and I can tell you, having sung it many times, it's a real workout for the choir as well. So it's not all soft consolation, but much of it is. It actually kind of forms an arc, because it begins very quietly and then it ends very quietly. And then in the middle, you have probably the most famous movement, this beautifully lyrical movement, which is then followed by a movement featuring a soprano soloist. Just gorgeous work, just an indelible choral masterpiece. And for this one, my first choice is a version from a conductor who brought us many versions, a noted Brahmsian, Herbert von Karajan. This is his digital version with the Vienna Singverein and the Vienna Philharmonic, featuring Barbara Hendricks and Jose Van Dam, the soprano and baritone soloist, who are excellent. Karajan has many versions, and he always did this piece very well. He brings that lushness, that beautiful romantic phrasing that is so essential to Brahms. You get that feeling of the consolation. He has that flexibility in the way he phrases. That's what I think sets Karajan apart, that I think is essential for this work. And then the powerful movements come across very powerfully as well. Vienna Singverein, they sing very powerfully, maybe a little bit thin sounding. They don't come out front and center. That's often the case in some of Karajan's choral recordings. But I think it's such a beautiful interpretation that the overall effect is one that, as one who, for me, I love the Brahms Requiem, this is the version that I think imparts all those qualities. He did do a version very well known in the 60s as well, with excellent soloists as well. I believe it's Gundula Janowitz and, who's the bass? I can't remember, but definitely Janowitz was one of them. I think that spiritual side comes out a little bit more strongly for me, at least in this later version. And of course, it's digitally recorded, so it sounds very strong. Now, if you do want a little more clarity, a good complement to the Carillon is this one. John Eliot Gardner with the Monteverdi Choir and the Orchestre Révolutionnaire et Romantique, 1990. This is one of the first Brahms Requiem versions that I grew to love, and it's one that, even though it's period performance, it's the musicality and Gardner's sensibility to Brahms's rhythms. It's really wonderful, and the Monteverdi Choir particularly. Here you do hear the text very clearly, very nuanced, wonderful attention to detail. And I think that lean approach, it's a little bit on the quicker side, and that kind of lean approach allows you to hear Brahms's harmonies in a different way. Very, very beautiful, very effective, and wonderful sound as well. So I think it makes a wonderful complement actually to the Carillon. And then I want to go back to a more traditional version. This one comes from 1987 from Carlo Maria Giulini with the Konzertvereinigung, the Vienna State Opera Chorus, and the Vienna Philharmonic. This is a really beautiful version. As you might expect with Giulini, it's very spiritual. It's a slightly more, I'd say, on the gentle side, which really works well for this piece. The chorus is very strong, very, very passionate and committed. The Vienna Philharmonic sounds gorgeous. And then I have to mention the soprano soloist, Barbara Bonney, one of the most beautiful versions you'll ever hear of that fifth movement solo. So this is a wonderful traditional modern version. And then I have to mention probably the classic version of the Brahms Requiem, Otto Klemperer, from 1961. With the Philharmonia Orchestra and Chorus, and this is very strong, very full tone from the chorus. Wonderful soloist Elizabeth Schwarzkopf and Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, and I will say that for me, it's more on the austere side. I would say it's a little bit quicker paced than Carillon or Giulini. Klemperer was one who didn't like to dilly-dally. We think of him as a specialist in romantic repertoire, but as I was saying earlier, the truth is he was not a romantic spirit, you might say. So he didn't like sentimentality, and I can see how for some people that actually works, because for some people they hear other interpretations and maybe it sounds too lugubrious. I think it works best here in those big fugues, especially like the sixth movement, just really powerful. So I can understand why for some this is the version of all versions. I would say it's among the best. I would still want to supplement it with others, but just a really powerful version from another great Brahms conductor. Another version I want to recommend comes from the 80s, from 1982. From Giuseppe Sinopoli, with the Prague Philharmonic Chorus and the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra. And you might actually say this is kind of like the anti-Klemperer in a sense, in terms of the tempos. Klemperer tended to be more homogeneous. He tended to play the slower stuff faster and the faster stuff slower, so it sounded more a similar tempo throughout, whereas Sinopoli does the opposite. He actually accentuates the differences. Starts out very slowly in the slow opening movement, and then the second movement as well. But then you get to the fugue at the end of the third movement, and it's just super quick. And I kind of like that. I think that flexibility is good for this work. A little bit more of a romantic sensibility, you might say. The chorus sounds they're very rich and strong. The one issue with this recording is it is a little bit reverberant, overly so. You don't get the clarity you might, for example, with Gardner. But for a work like this, a romantic work, I think it still works to get that feeling across of the consolation and the warmth, as well as the power. So this is a beautiful version. Lucia Pop is wonderful in this soprano solo. And then this is one that I got a long time ago. I got it actually from a used CD store. I just remember seeing the cover and just thinking, oh, that looks cool. So I grabbed it. And this actually has, with the same performers, you have some of Brahms's other choral works for chorus and orchestra, including Nenni, Rinaldo, Triumphlied, Schicksalslied. Also includes the Alto Rhapsody. So for completeness sake, it's an excellent set, and they are also wonderfully done, very, very powerful. So if you can find either this set, or I think it's packaged differently, you can get it either that way, or the Requiem also you can get it by itself. All right, so let's look at some older versions. One that is kind of a classic. You might say idiomatic German version is this one, conducted by Rudolf Kempe, noted Brahms conductor. I recommended his symphony recordings in my symphonies video, with the St. Hedwig's Cathedral Chorus and the Berlin Philharmonic. And it's just a very devoted, passionate, richly interpreted version. The sound it's not stereo, so it's not the best quality in terms of fullness, but it's fairly clear. The soloists are wonderful. Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau is back again. I think even stronger than he was for Klemperer. Not just commanding, but there's this nuance to the way he's the leader specialist, of course. So Brahms was always right up his alley. One of the strongest solos of this on record. And then you have the beautiful shimmering soprano Elizabeth Grimmer as well. So a classic version. And then from 1954, on the other side of the Atlantic, we have this one with Bruno Walter, another noted Brahmsian. This is with the Westminster Choir and the New York Philharmonic. And the thing that is really, you notice, first of all, is there's this urgency to this one. It's one of the faster versions among modern instruments versions. But it still also has that warmth that we associate with Walter. But if you are one who maybe doesn't like in this work for things to just be slow and to dilly-dally, this might be right up your alley, because Walter definitely does not waste any time. Excellent soloist as well, the beautiful firm soprano of Irmgard Seefried, and then George London, just this really imposing voice in the bass solos. So another wonderful version. Now, going back further to 1947, we have this one. Now we're back to Herbert von Karajan, his first recording with the Vienna Singverein and the Vienna Philharmonic. And this is not only one of my favorite Brahms Requiems, but favorite choral recordings. It's just wonderfully intense, wonderfully passionate, just immense conviction from everybody, the soloist, the chorus. Karajan is really masterly in the way he paces and phrases everything. The soloists, incidentally, are a younger Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, sounding beautifully delicate and nuanced, and then the strong, commanding Hans Hotter, not only known as Wotan, but he also, as I mentioned in my last video, was a Brahms leader specialist as well. He's really strong. The chorus sounds a little bit on the thin side. From what I've heard, they were a little bit thin in number. I don't know if there was a post-war reason for that. I've heard that Schwarzkopf actually sang with the chorus, and I think I do maybe hear her voice at times, but good, because it's fabulous. I mean, every movement in this recording is just sung with such commitment and warmth and nuance that it's just a wonderful recording. Of course, it's old. Of course, the sound is dated, but it's fairly clear. Now, I wish I could say the same about this recording. There's a live recording from 1947 conducted by Wilhelm Furtwängler from the Lucerne Festival, with the Lucerne Festival Chorus and Orchestra. I wish I could say the same. I actually have a little story about this one. I was talking with the wife of Walter de Clue. He was the founder of my hometown opera, Austin Opera, who actually studied with Furtwängler and Toscanini when he was in Europe, and was involved with the Lucerne Festival as well. And his wife told me about half a century after this recording, she told me about her experience being at this concert. She told me about Furtwängler's long, spidery arms, as she described it, and then she talked about Schwarzkopf, just those golden tones that she immediately went back to her hotel room and tried to emulate in the mirror. Now, I was jealous for two reasons. One, that she got to actually be there and see it, and second, that she actually got to hear it in its full glory. As opposed to the dismal sound that we have now. It's just, unfortunately, was really poorly recorded. This Idis version is the most clear that I've come across so far. Still not very good, but you get at least an idea of a very powerful interpretation from Furtwängler. Beautifully caressed and phrased in the softer sections, very committed as you would often expect. And then those powerful climaxes. The third movement, the fugue, was one of my favorite parts of the Requiem. The final note just extends forever. It's just so dramatic. And then the soloist, it's the same soloist from the Carême we just talked about. Schwarzkopf actually sounds a little bit more open, I would say, in this recording. Just really beautiful, and then Hotter is again commanding. So a wonderful performance, wonderful recorded performance. Unfortunately, not sounding so good. You can incidentally get a better sounding Furtwängler recording in Stockholm. That was done a year later. That's available as well, and it is definitely much more clear and full sounding. But as a performance, the intensity of this one is what I still come back to. All right, so before we leave Brahms, I want to discuss his motets, these shorter a cappella works. Again, we talked about the Bach motets, and actually Brahms utilized a lot of that Bach counterpoint, but fused with those rich Brahms harmonies and channeled into his spiritual side. And these are just gorgeous works. They were in little sets throughout his life. There's the earlier Opus 29, Opus 74 was pretty much in the middle, and then at the very end he wrote the Opus 109 and 110 motets. Really beautiful works. And my top choice for this one is a group that I recommended for those Bach motets as well. Richard Marlowe conducting the Trinity College Choir in 1989. And again, that kind of Anglican choir sound that they bring to this Renaissance, motets that the motet style that has its roots in the Renaissance, I think really works. It has that heavenly aspect. They sound so youthful and delicate, just really exquisitely gorgeous, and as well as detailed. Well paced by Marlowe. It's got a nice kind of church acoustic, but with clarity. Just a beautiful listening experience. And then it also includes some of the other Brahms choral works that are accompanied by organ, including one of the most beautiful short choral works written by anybody, his Opus 30 Geistliches Lied, spiritual song. Again, it utilizes that Bach counterpoint with Brahms's rich harmonic writing, and then the end, there's this Amen section that is just like heavenly resolution in perfection. It's just absolutely gorgeous and beautifully done here. All right, so that's Brahms. And now we come to 20th century British composer Benjamin Britten. And one of the masterpieces of the 20th century, his colossal War Requiem. This is a really ambitious, humongous work in terms of the personnel. It was written at the commemoration of for the commemoration of the Coventry Cathedral in Britain, which had been destroyed in World War II. And as a war requiem, it was both a requiem for the dead, of war, as well as a kind of a protest against war itself. It's really a dynamic work. The personnel are actually split into three groups. And one group is a chorus and orchestra and a soprano soloist, which does the traditional Latin text. Then another group, you have a chamber orchestra with two soloists, a baritone and a tenor, and they sing English texts by a British writer, Wilfred Owen, who wrote of the horrors of war before he himself tragically died just 1 week before the end of World War I. And so that is really impactful, that text. And then you have this other kind of character, you might say, is this other group is a boys' choir that sing with organ. And they all come together at the very end in this very kind of sweet, lovely movement called Let Us Sleep Now. Just really beautiful, just a really poignant, powerful masterwork. And as you might expect, the version that I would... I'm not obligated to list this one first, but I believe it deserves its status, is the composer's own recording, made in 1963. And he obviously brings his insights to this work. What I hear when I listen to this recording is the kind of the stark reality of war. There's almost this undertone of anger that you can feel throughout this recording. I think in large part due to the Wilfred Owen text being sung by Peter Pearce and Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau so intensely. Just real those moments of stillness and starkness that they bring to this. Both of them, incidentally, ironically enough, you think of Pearce and Fischer-Dieskau, you often think of the evangelist and Jesus in the St. Matthew Passion, or the St. John Passion even. But they bring just. They bring that humanity and that intensity, and then you have Galina Vishnevskaya as the soprano soloist with the large choir. And what's interesting there is she sings wonderfully as well, very rich toned. You have each of the soloists representing major players in the war. You have Pearce, the Englishman, you have Fischer-Dieskau, the German, and you have Vishnevskaya, the Russian. That was done on purpose. But it's just a really powerful recording, very well engineered, and one of those proverbial gramophone classics. However, I do want to mention a couple of newer ones. It really does benefit to hear it in digital sound, and you get that here, the clarity you get from this recording from 1991. Conducted by Richard Hickox and the same group, the London Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, same group as you had in the Britten performance. And here, it's just so immaculate and well detailed. When they all combine together in the Let Us Sleep Now ending, that kind of cacophony of sound, it's just gorgeous, just really impactful. One interesting note here is Heather Harper is the soprano. 30 years earlier, actually, she was the original soprano in the premiere performance of the work. It was supposed to be Vishnevskaya, but the Soviet Union would not release her, so it was Harper. So we got her in this recording, and she sounds beautiful. So this is an excellent version. And then one more I want to recommend. With this same group, the London Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, this is from 2011, conducted by Gianandrea Noceda. And this is one I think that, in addition to that more of that clarity and the more detailed sound, there's also a sense of urgency here, the dramatic aspect, the kind of protest against war. It's really palpably felt in this recording. The soloists are excellent too in the Wilfred Owen text. You have Ian Bostridge, the tenor, and Simon Keenly's side is the baritone. Very eloquent and rich toned, both of them. So another very impactful, powerful version. Now, before I leave Britain, I want to talk about some of his earlier, shorter choral works that display his musical inventiveness, as well as the sort of the beautiful way he wrote for the higher treble voices, the delicacy. One of them is "Rejoice in the Lamb." Wonderful work, beautiful haunting sonorities, very interesting text that talks about animals and letters of the alphabet. It's a very, very interesting dynamic work. And then you have the Hymn to Saint Cecilia, which is also a fairly dynamic work. It especially features the high treble voices very beautifully. Saint Cecilia was the patron saint of music. And then there is also the Ceremony for Carols, which is written just for treble voices, very sparsely orchestrated. I think it basically just has a harp. There's a lot of stillness to it. It's a very kind of gentle, quiet piece. Great for Christmas time, of course. And for these works, I want to recommend these recordings from the early 70s. Sir David Wilcox with the King's College Choir. Very much works that are in their bones. The soft singing, the treble voices with the boys' choir sounds really apt. But the choir also has nice presence. Wilcox paces everything beautifully, and just wonderful character and identification with the works that is palpable. So this is a great way to get to learn them. All right, so that's Britain. Now we come to late Romantic Austrian composer Anton Bruckner. Now, most of you will know him from his symphonies, but he also wrote a lot of wonderful choral works, three kind of larger masses, not as big as like the St. Matthew or the Mass in B minor, but really powerful, dense masses, as well as some shorter motets, and then another large work, the Te Deum. And if you like his symphonies, you'll probably like these works too. They're very probing, very spiritual. They have those large climaxes, but also some beautifully quiet moments as well. Mass number 2 has a beautiful opening, the Kyrie, that's very still, very shimmery. So these are wonderful works, and I have to recommend the classic version for these, conducted by Eugen Jochum with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra and Chorus. These were recorded in the 60s and 70s. And Jochum, of course, he's known as a Brucknerian, so he paces these wonderfully. He also was just wonderful with choirs. That spirituality that he brought. The chorus is just really strong. They bring a lot of heft to these works, rich toned, very powerful, but also their ability to sing softly. For example, that Kyrie that I mentioned at the beginning of Mass number 2, the way they are able to begin it so delicately, but still with that rich color is really something. So these have been classics for over half a century, and I have to recommend them as a starting point. This is the original big box. They are available separately, like the masses and the motets are separated from each other in like 2 different original sets now. But this is the original box. I don't think they've ever been repackaged together. But anyways, you can find them in some form or fashion. All right, so that is Bruckner. Now we come to British composer Frederick Delius, 20th century composer, very interesting composer with a diverse background, including time he spent on a plantation in Florida where he absorbed African American spirituals. And you can hear that element in his work of the sort of melodic lyricism. His works tend to be fairly atmospheric and ethereal and descriptive. They do have their dramatic points too, but for the most part, I would say it's more of this kind of ethereal, evocative nature that they have. Very much wedded to the text of the works. And I want to recommend a couple that are from Walt Whitman texts. One is Sea Drift, which features a baritone soloist with the choir. And this is a description from a boy's point of view of a mockingbird who has lost his mate. So it's kind of a wistful, longing work. And then Songs of Farewell, which Delius actually wrote towards the end of his life when he was very ill, and so he was contemplating the saying farewell. A very beautiful work as well. And my top choice for this one is. Let's see. Oh, here it is. This version from 1993, conducted by Richard Hickox with the Bournemouth Symphony and Chorus. And Bryn Terfel is the baritone soloist in Sea Drift, and he is just wonderful, just full of character and richness and power, as well as the ability to sing so softly and convey that feeling of longing as well. Beautifully sung by the chorus. Hickox does a wonderful job of accentuating both the dramatic high points as well as those caressing soft phrases, those evocative phrases, very ethereal sounding, as is the Songs of Farewell. So both of them beautifully done. And then this also includes a work called the Songs of Sunset, another beautiful work featuring both Bryn Terfel and Sally Burgess, the soprano, along with the chorus. That one is also beautifully done. Very well recorded as well. All right, so that's Delius. Now we come to 20th century organist / composer Maurice Durufle and his Requiem. Now, this is a work that, if you are like me and you're steeped in choral singing and aficionadodom, you know this work well. I think it's one of the masterworks of the 20th century. So I'm sort of preaching to the choir when I say that. Sorry, no pun intended. But I'm surprised often in classical conversation how often that's a work that people who are not as into choral music don't necessarily know the work as well. It's sort of known as lazily, I think, as the little brother to the Fauré Requiem. And sure, superficially, they're both French, and they're both... compared to other requiems, they're a little bit more. They're definitely more on the calming side. But Durufle's, it's definitely its own animal. It's based on Gregorian chant, but with Durufle, he molds it into just these beautifully haunting sonorities. Also, plenty of dramatic high points as well. Just a gorgeous work. And then I'm also going to mention his 4 motets, the Quatre motets. The shorter, really beautiful works, the most famous of which is Ubi Caritas et Amor, where charity and love are. All the recordings I'll mention have those works as well. And my top choice for this is this one, Matthew Best with the Corridon Singers and the English Chamber Orchestra, recorded in 1985. Now, this is the middle ground version. So originally there was the version with full orchestra as well as the version with just organ. And this one is a version that uses organ plus a smaller orchestra. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get that kind of that ethereal warmth you get with the orchestra, but also the feeling of meditative simplicity with the organ. And it's just a gorgeous recording, just immaculately sung, wonderfully paced, wonderful sound quality. So it really brings home that sort of haunting feeling and meditative quality that the work has. Really a gorgeous starting point if you're investigating this work. Now, for something that uses the larger forces, we have the composer's own recording from 1959. Actually, fairly well recorded for that time. You really don't need to make that big a consideration for the sound. It's with the chorales Philippe Caillard and Stéphane Caillard and the Lamoureux Orchestra. And you definitely get that sense that the chorus was well drilled by the composer, because there's this definite attention to detail, the musical details, lots of dynamic difference between the loud parts and the soft, more caressing, meditative parts. Really beautifully moving performance. It's not as meticulous in its how to put it. Immaculate choral sound, you might say, compared to the corridon singers, but musically it's very beautiful and really well done. And then finally, I want to mention a recording that now goes to the simple version, the one with just organ. This is from 1992 with Gary Graydon and the St. Jacob's Chamber Choir. And this one, as you might expect, accentuates more of the solemn meditative quality. It doesn't have quite of the dramatic impact in the loud sections, but it's just so gorgeous and immaculately sung, beautifully recorded. And I have to mention also the baritone soloist, Peter Mattei. We know him probably more. A lot of people know him now more as a renowned opera singer. He just sounds like this was composed for him. He has this haunting quality that he brings, this richness to the baritone solo that's really unforgettable. Wonderfully recorded as well. All right, so that is Durufle. Now let's go to English composer Edward Elgar, and a work that he wrote right around 1900, The Dream of Gerontius, that he really poured his heart into. It's one of these large choral orchestra works, about an hour and a half long. And the best way I can describe it is it's sort of like a vocal drama with religious themes. The main character is Gerontius, sung by a tenor. He sings quite a bit throughout the work, and he's sort of an everyman who is grappling with death. And then in the second part, he's led by an angel, sung by the alto. And he goes on this journey where he has a brush with demons, and then finally he's in front of God. And you'll know it when you hear it. It's really loud. The moment of judgment is really stark, and then he's led off peacefully into purgatory. So it's sort of, even if you don't buy into the religious themes necessarily, it's about conquering fear with hope, which is something that I think we can all relate to on some level, and it's just a really rich, powerful piece. It does take, I think, a lot of advocacy in terms of the performance and selling the story, and my top choice for this work, I think, does an excellent job of that. It's an old classic. This is Sir John Barbaroli with the Halle Orchestra and Chorus from 1964. And yeah, you have that palpable sense of passion and commitment and warmth. Barbaroli paces everything so that the climaxes have the maximum impact. And then you have some wonderful soloists. You have Richard Lewis as Gerontius, very expressive and rich-toned, and then especially the angel, the alto, Janet Baker, just sounds just gorgeously comforting. She's in fantastic voice, so that almost is worth the recording by itself. But the entire thing is just a wonderful way to get to know the work. I do want to mention one more version, historical version, from really the giant of 20th century English choral tradition, Sir Malcolm Sargent, conducting the Huddersfield Choral Society and the Liverpool Philharmonic. This is back in 1945. The sound is somewhat dim, a little bit noisy, not the greatest sound quality, but other than that, you get the fullness of the performance, and it's just really passionately done. They just pour their hearts into it, which again, I think is something that really helps in this particular work especially. Gerontius is performed by Handel Nash, who was a famed oratorio singer in Britain, and he also brings that passion and commitment and beautiful tone. So this is a version, I think, that if you want to love the work and you can get past the sound quality, I think this is very valuable as well. All right, now we come to French romantic Gabriel Fauré and his Requiem. This Requiem, compared to most Requiems, it's a much more gentle work, much more soothing, you might say. It's just over half an hour long, so it's not like these epic works that you get sometimes, but it's fairly simple work. I can tell you as a performer, it's not that difficult to perform, and I think approaching it that way helps as a performer, not overdoing it, accentuating the calming effect that the composer was going for. And my top choice, I think, succeeds in doing that. And that is a group I've mentioned before for their motet recordings, Richard Marlowe with the Trinity College Choir, recorded in 1989. And I've said before in the motet recordings that the youthfulness and the kind of purity of tone and the simplicity works to this kind of heavenly effect. I think it definitely does here as well. Beautifully paced, wonderfully recorded, and I think that reverential kind of calming simplicity really comes across. I also want to mention that there is a shorter work called the Cantique de Racine, beautifully gentle, again, kind of a calming work with organ that is also beautifully done here. Another recording in that same spirit is one from 1984, a very famous recording conducted by John Rutter with the Cambridge Singers and the London Sinfonia. This one I think has a little bit more clarity and presence, but also still that kind of Anglican sound of more simplicity. It actually uses a reduced orchestra to kind of help accentuate that. It also comes with a version of Cantique de Racine. This one is actually the orchestrated version with harp. It's a little bit more, kind of a elongated version, but it's very beautiful. So excellent coupling here as well. And then we have a couple of French versions, starting with Philippe Herweg and La Chapelle Royale, the Collegium Vocal Ghent and Orchestre des Champs-Élysées, recorded in 2001. And as you come to expect with Herweg, it's got that beauty, that gentleness, that kind of lushness that's just really a gorgeous effect. It really works well in this piece. I would even say that in this recording there's even a little bit more of a darkness to it, not pathos so much, but just more of a multi-layered effect, you might say, rather than just calming simplicity. That adds something as well. So really beautiful recording. And then a few decades earlier, we have Jean Fornet conducting the Netherlands Chamber Chorus and the Rotterdam Philharmonic. This is from 1975. This is more of the full kind of romantic treatment, although they sing very musically, and it's a really glowing performance, very, very beautifully done. You can't go wrong with this if you want more of the kind of larger sound, and you also have, in that beautiful Pie Jesu soprano solo, you have Ellie Ameling singing that here, just sounding angelically gorgeous. I've sung her praises not just for choral recordings, but also for her Fauré chanson. So she's really tailored for this. So that's a beautiful recording. Then we have what might be called the old classic among larger scaled recordings, and that is André Cléton with the Choral Elisabeth Brasseur, as well as the Paris Conservatoire from 1964. Two illustrious soloists. You have Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, sounding both nuanced and dramatic as well, and then Victoria de Los Angeles, more of an operatic tone than we're used to in the Pie Jesu, but she controls it very well. I will say that this version for me has always been a little bit of a challenge. Kind of like I described the Klemperer Bach St. Matthew Passion. It's very slow. Almost feeling inert at times. Maybe that's just because I've performed this work before and I'm used to the conventional tempos. So that's something that you might have to get used to. But it is a romantic work. It does kind of have this feeling of solemnity to it at that tempo. And it's got a nice opulence to it as well. It's not the most detailed choral contribution you'll ever hear, particularly with the kind of reverberant sound they're recorded in. But overall, there is that effect of reverential, romanticism. So it definitely has its place, I would say, even if for some of us it's a challenge in terms of the tempos. But definitely an old classic version. And then finally, an even older version I want to mention is this one from Nadia Boulanger and an unnamed chorus and orchestra. I guess they were her people. Boulanger was a famed teacher in Paris throughout the 20th century. She actually studied with Fauré at the Paris Conservatoire. And this is another version that kind of alludes to that romanticism that, of course, Fauré was a product of. It's a very warm-hearted version, beautifully sung and phrased, fairly clear recording actually for its time. So I think for telling that side of it, you might say the romantic side, I think this is also an excellent choice. Now we come to one of the giants of Baroque music, next to Bach, George Friedrich Handel, and his iconic choral masterwork, The Messiah. Really the granddaddy of choral music, definitely in terms of its popularity, its enduring popularity. Everyone who's sung in a church choir knows this work. Handel really was a fascinating composer. He was a cosmopolitan composer, if there ever was one. He came from Germany originally, where he absorbed German counterpoint. Then he spent time in Italy, where he learned about Italian opera. And then he spent the remainder of his life, really the bulk of his compositional life, in England, and where he kind of absorbed the English pomp and circumstance, you might say. So they all meld into something very unique, but definitely also having his own unique voice as well. One thing about Handel is that to me, he's never been what you might say is the tortured artist, like the romantic soul, like we think of Beethoven. Handel, I really think, was someone who wrote for the public. He really wanted his music in its time to be appreciated. And in the beginning, in England, he specialized particularly in opera. And the English audiences just ate it up. However, there came a point where actually opera was going out of style. It was considered elitist. This was around the time that John Gay wrote his work, The Beggar's Opera, which actually kind of poked fun at the elitism of opera. And Handel kind of took the hint, and he actually transitioned into oratorios that he wrote in English, where he was also able to show his spiritual side. And those became very popular. And of course, the most popular was The Messiah, which really was a hit pretty much from the time it was composed all the way through until now. It's basically a summation of Christian theology. It's in three parts. The first part is the birth of Jesus. Then the second part is the death of Jesus. And then in the third part is the resurrection of the dead. Maybe most famously, there's that aria, the trumpet shall sound. And then the revelation of Christ in heaven. And it's you're just prototypical choral work. You've got the four soloists. You've got all the tuneful choral numbers as well. Probably definitely most famous is the Hallelujah chorus that comes at the end of part 2. And it's just one of those indelible masterworks. And it has a lot of great recordings. My top choice is one that actually, in its time, it was bridging the gap sort of between the old Romantic style and the newer style, but now itself is probably considered more of an older classic, and that's Sir Colin Davis with the London Symphony Chorus and Orchestra, recorded in 1966. And it does have a little bit more of that sort of sensitivity to Baroque style, but still more in the Romantic tradition. So there's a power and I would say a soulfulness to it that really comes across. Very beautifully sung, beautifully recorded. Wonderful soloist as well. This is one of those kind of quintessential classics that I think still is a great way to start if you're getting into the Messiah for the first time. And then another version from just 10 years later came from Sir Neville Mariner and the Academy and Choir of St. Martin in the Fields. And this one is along the same lines of being sort of a bridge between the modern instrument style and the newer Baroque style. I would say it's even a little bit more on the gentle side than Davis. It's really gorgeous. A beautiful sound from the orchestra, wonderful soloists. You can't go wrong here as well. It's just a beautiful recording. And then one that is also modern instruments, but closer to our time, from 2008, is this one from Stephen Layton and a group called Polyphony with the Britten Sinfonia. Now this one is modern instruments, but it sounds a little bit more like period instruments. The violin sound, for example, the string sound is a little bit more of that vibrato-less sound, but it's really stylish and beautifully sung. It's got a lot of energy and spirit, just immaculately performed and beautifully recorded as well. So if you're wanting a more modern instrument version, I think you can't go wrong with this one. However, we have to talk about the period instrument versions as well. And for this one, maybe the classic version is this one from Trevor Pinnock and the English Concert and Chorus from 1988. Really beautiful. Pinnock, his period instrument sound is a little bit more full, almost more like that kind of lush modern instrument sound. So for a lot of people, this is easier to take if they don't naturally go for period instruments, and you definitely hear that here. It's kind of a contained performance. It's not too dramatic. It's very eloquent, but there's this etherealness to it that's really, really gorgeous. And so this one has always been sort of a classic period version. And as has this one, which I believe is actually the pioneering period version, which is the one from Christopher Hogwood with the the choir of Christ Church Cathedral and the Academy of Ancient Music, recorded in 1980. And the thing about this one is it's more authentic in terms of, like, for example, using boy sopranos in the choir. And there's also more of a simplicity to the way it's done. It's kind of the opposite of those grand romantic tradition performances. More of a dryness to the sound. And I think the spirituality of the work really comes through more than, say, the theatricality. And there's a place for that. It's a really beautiful experience listening to this one. Emmett Kirkby does a wonderful job on the soprano solos. So this is another, I guess you can call it now, a classic period version as well. And then you had the floodgates open. You had so many different period instrument groups, too many to name, that came out with wonderful versions. One is from 1993. This is with William Christie and Les Arts Florissants. And this kind of has kind of the best qualities of period performance. Immaculate singing and playing, beautiful sound. wonderful dexterity, the way they handle the fast rhythms, very kind of seemingly effortlessly. Wonderful solo work as well. You hear Andreas Scholl, the countertenor, sounding beautifully smooth. Nathan Berg is the bass, very, very virile and strong. So a very immaculately sung, a beautiful sounding period version as well. And then from a few years later, in 2009, we have this version from John Butt and the Dunedin Consort and Players. And this one is a little bit more intimate. It's smaller in scale. It's replicating the original 1742 Dublin performance, so using much fewer voices, but they sing with nice full tone, and there's a lushness to the sound quality, so it's not sparse sounding, and it's a really animated version. If you've heard too many messiahs, maybe to where you think you're bored with the work, this might be a good version to kind of perk you up. It's got an immediacy to it and a vibrancy to it that is really captivating. Now, to go back to more of those older tradition versions, this one comes from 1967, and it's from Sir Charles Mackerras with the Ambrosian Singers and the English Chamber Orchestra. Now, it is modern sound, it is a larger chorus, it's got nice warmth to it like you have with those versions, but Mackerras was more attuned to Baroque sensitivity. So, for example, he uses a lot of ornamentation, which adds this kind of feeling of elegance to it. So it's again one of those kind of like Colin Davis where there's this Baroque sensibility, you might say. Janet Baker, by the way, is one of the soloists. She does a fantastic job. So this is another excellent modern instrument version to go along with the Davis and the Mariner. And then we have this old classic, Sir Thomas Beecham from 1959 with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and Chorus. And this one, very famously, or as some people might say infamously, uses the Eugene Goosens orchestration, which really spruces it up, including cymbal crashes, for example, which might be off-putting to some, might be over the top in terms of theatricality. It reminds me a little bit of those Stokowski orchestrations of Bach. But I think the thing about that is that's definitely kind of a novelty. But really what sets this version apart to me is, in terms of its romantic approach, is just the approach to the music itself, the phrasing, for example. A much more flexibility and warmth, which I really do think works well in quite a bit of it. It's a very moving performance. The Pastoral Symphony that it's in the middle of part one is just gorgeously and lushly played. And then He Shall Feed His Flock. It's a duet between soprano and alto. Just really gorgeous. But then there are also some parts, like, for example, the chorus, All We Like Sheep, which is taken really fast, actually, very exuberantly. So it's quite a dynamic interpretation and a real proverbial classic. It's a little bit far different from what we're used to today, but I think one that still holds its place. And it's very, very well recorded as well. Nice presence and fullness to the sound. Now, if we are talking about old romantic versions, I have one more I need to recommend. And this is from, again, that elder statesman of British choral music, Sir Malcolm Sargent. This is with the Huddersfield Choral Society and the Liverpool Philharmonic in 1946. Very well transferred. Again, one of these Dutton laboratory transfers that I've talked about before. A really astonishing clarity for its time in the way they've cleaned them up. It has this kind of glow to it. And yeah, it's tempos are slower, more vibrato. The chorus is not as clean, but they sing with such conviction. It's a bygone tradition. For example, Since My Man Came Death, the contrast between the soft and the loud, it's really impactful. You have the traditional English oratorio soloists, some of the legends of their time, like Isabel Bailey, the bell-toned soprano. So as an artifact, you might say, this especially in this transfer, this is a really, really wonderful recording. I get a lot of pleasure out of this one. I think it's gorgeous, and it's so communicative that I wouldn't want to be without it. All right, so sticking with Handel, he did write, believe it or not, other oratorios besides the Messiah, and a lot of them were actually Old Testament based, and most of them had not just your kind of nameless solo, but they actually had characters, and that includes Solomon, really beautiful oratorio, very celebratory. Of Solomon and his reign, but it's sort of an allegory actually, because the subtext is that it was really written for its time, Handel's time, during the reign of George II, and it was really about the glory of George II's reign. And so, yeah, you have the characters. You have Solomon, his wife, Zadok, the high priest. There are the two harlots, the two women fighting over the baby. You might remember that story where Solomon decides to cut the baby in half, and then one of them says, no, I'd rather give it up. And then he's like, oh, okay, then you must be the mother. It's kind of the dramatic high point of the work. And then in the final part, the Queen of Sheba shows up, and we have the celebratory little orchestral music, the arrival of the Queen of Sheba, which often is done by itself. So it's a really festive, celebratory work. And this recording, I think, really does a great job. It's a classic period instrument version from 1984 with John Eliot Gardner conducting, the Monteverdi Choir and English Baroque soloists again. Carolyn Watkinson is the alto who sings the part of Solomon. And she has a nice, calming, dignified presence. All those soloists are excellent. The choir is fabulous, as you come to expect, and just the meticulousness, the immaculate singing, and the clarity, both the chorus and the orchestra. They produce this wonderful sound. Wonderfully dramatic and festive, and just a wonderful Handel oratorio recording. I want to mention another oratorio from a little earlier, Israel and Egypt. In this one, it actually features the chorus more front and center. It doesn't have kind of named characters, kind of like the Messiah. It just has chorus and soloists. And it depicts, as you might expect, the Exodus from Egypt. And it's a really rich, colorful work. For example, there's the Plague of the Flies, where the violins go crazy, kind of depicting the flies. So it's a really fun work. And for this one, I recommend John Eliot Gardner. This is a little bit earlier, 1978. Again, with the Monteverdi Choir and English Baroque soloist. And for this one, I think part of the reason that I recommend this one is the choir again, the Monteverdi Choir. They're just so good. And the character that they show, in addition to the detail and nuance, and then the immaculate virtuosity, is so important in this work, and they just really bring that. Excellent way to get to know that work. Now, before leaving Handel, I want to mention a shorter work he wrote, a liturgical work. Runs about half an hour long, and this is much earlier, actually before he even came to England. This is actually when he was in Italy, the Dixit Dominus. And this shows the influence of the German counterpoint that he learned growing up, as well as that kind of lyrical Italian Vivaldi sound that he brings, particularly like the melodic string sections, as well as his own voice. It's a very energetic, rhythmic work. And being on the shorter side, kind of like I said about Bach's Magnificat, it's not a bad place to first come to Handel for his choral works. And for this one, I recommend This 1987 recording conducted by Simon Preston with the Westminster Abbey Chorus and Orchestra. Wonderfully performed, very rich and colorful, wonderful sound, and particularly the rhythmic excitement that they bring. It's really, really well done in this recording. It also comes with a couple of other Handel liturgic works from the same time period, the Salve Regina and the Nisi Dominus. So a wonderful disc overall of a very invigorating, colorful work. And then lastly, I want to mention with Handel, the most famous of his 4 coronation anthems. This one is called Zadok the Priest. It was written for the coronation of George II in 1727, and it's been performed at every coronation since then. It's kind of the epitome of pomp and circumstance. It's a very majestic, reverent work, and I have to go to this classic version as my top choice. Sir David Wilcox and the King's College Choir, accompanied by the English Chamber Orchestra. And they have that kind of British sound. It's very, very elegant, as well as being magisterial, bringing that feeling of pomp and circumstance. I remember singing this with my university choir at graduations, actually, and it's a really fun work to sing. It's perfect for the moment, and this recording does a great job. Wonderful disc overall, by the way. I'm going to mention some other works that includes the Haydn Nelson Mass and the Vivaldi Gloria. So this is kind of the filler, but it's an excellent supplement to the disc. All right, so now we come to Joseph Haydn, and I would say very appropriately so, because his big choral work, The Creation, Die Schöpfung in German, was really inspired by what he heard of Handel oratorios when he was visiting England. In fact, that's why in performance, it can either be in German or in English, because it pretty much was inspired by the English oratorio tradition. He was writing about the creation from the book of Genesis. You have 3 main characters, these archangels, Raphael the bass, Gabriel the soprano, and Uriel the tenor. It's a little bit more, I would say, solo-based. The chorus does not have as much to do as some of the other large choral works, but when they show up, they're very invigorating and exciting, particularly at the ends of movements. And then with Haydn, as you might expect, you have often a lot of clever word painting, particularly when they're describing the creation of the animals. You also have, at the end, you have the creation of the humans, and you have Adam and Eve show up in a bass and a soprano. The opening movement has this moment where the chorus sings, "Let there be light," and it switches from C minor to C major. That's one of those famous Haydn moments. So a really kind of celebratory work, you might say. And for this one, I recommend first the old classic, the one with Herbert von Karajan conducting the Vienna Singverein and the Berlin Philharmonic in the late 60s. And first you have to mention, I think, the soloist. It's a fantastic cast of soloists. Walter Berry as Raphael, very, very rich and virile. Gunjil Janowitz, beautiful as Gabriel. And then Fritz Wunderlich sings Uriel. And what do you expect with Wunderlich? It's rich and dramatic. Unfortunately, he passed away during the recording sessions. He actually was able to complete all the arias, and so they had to bring in another tenor named Walter Krenn to sing, Werner Krenn, to sing the recitatives. And he actually sounded a little bit like Wunderlich, so you actually don't even notice that much. But the soloists are fantastic, including in the Adam and Eve section. You have Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau joining as Adam, and then he and Gundula Janowitz, she sings Eve, just make a sublime team. Just really crowns the whole performance. A beautiful, lush, powerful playing from the Berlin Philharmonic. Carrie-Anne brings this feeling of majesty to the work. So a classic version and still the one to start with. As you might have guessed, this is the version in German. Another German version I want to recommend from the same time period is this one, conducted by Eugen Jochum with the Bavarian Radio Symphony and Chorus. And this one, I think, first of all, Jochum was an excellent interpreter of Haydn. I mentioned him for the Haydn symphonies. You hear those little details come out. You really feel that sense of wonderment at the creation of the world. And the chorus sounds wonderful, too. This is, again, a German version. There is the Heavens Are Telling chorale that ends the first part, which has one of the most exciting endings to a chorus you'll hear, and just sounds really dramatic and powerful here. And then the soloists are also excellent. You have Gottlob Frick is a very strong Raphael. So this is another traditional version that I wouldn't want to be without. Now, for versions in English, I want to recommend a period performance from 1990 conducted by Christopher Hogwood. This is with the Oxford New College Choir and the Academy of Ancient Music. And it actually replicates, authentically, the surprisingly enough, the largeness of the original performances. So it's actually larger in terms of number of performers than you are used to from a period performance, but they also bring that clarity. And it's a really exciting version. It really has a lot of punch and energy. Emmett Kirkby is an excellent soprano in the soprano role, beautifully angelic. And for an English version, I think this is an excellent one to go with. As is this one, a little newer, from 2003, conducted by Nicholas Hardencourt with the Arnold Schoenberg Choir and the Concentus Musicus Wien. This was a live recording, but it sounds really good still. You really can't tell. And it has a nice fullness to it for a period performance. Also, a nice bit of flexibility, I would say. So it doesn't sound stiff. There's a vitality to the performance that I think really works. Really tells the story well with rich toned soloists. So that's an excellent English version as well. All right. Next, I want to talk about Haydn's other major choral work. Kind of like Handel had a lot of success with the Messiah, Haydn in his time enjoyed a lot of success with the creation. So he followed it up with an even longer work, The Seasons, or in German, Die Jahreszeiten. This one, he actually labored a little bit more on this one. He was in ill health in his final years. It never achieved quite the popularity of the creation, but it has that same feeling of exuberance and inventiveness about it. It also features three soloists, just like the creation: soprano, tenor, and bass. And it has movements that are basically about the four different seasons. One thing I wanted to mention is in the first movement, Spring. No, first movement, Spring. There's a plowman who is singing to himself the surprise symphony theme. So sometimes Haydn liked to sprinkle in a little bit of humor here and there, but it's even if it's not as popular as the creation. It's still a work, I think, that brings that same charm and exuberance. And my first choice is a traditional German version conducted by Karl Böhm with the Vienna Singverein and the Vienna Symphony. And this is a really magisterial, powerful, rich sounding, both in terms of the performance and the recording. It has excellent soloists. You have Gundula Janowitz, sounding beautifully radiant, especially in the soprano solo. Martutal Vela is the bass, really rich, velvety tone. And then a young Peter Schreier. He sounds very clear and golden toned. It's nice to hear him in these younger days. So this is a wonderful German version. And then for English, I want to recommend this old classic from 1956. Fairly good sound, though, for 1956. This is conducted by Sir Thomas Beecham. This is with the Beecham Choral Society and the Royal Philharmonic. And it's just a very, very passionate, invigorating performance. Listen, for example, to in the movement Autumn, the horn calls. It's just done with so much character and exuberance, and also warmth and poignancy that you typically get from Beecham recordings. Elsie Morrison really shines in the soprano solo. So a wonderful classic version if you want it in English. And then finally, I want to mention one of Haydn's shorter works. One of the masses that he wrote, the most popular of them, the Nelson Mass. Ironically, it actually was originally called the Missa in Angustis, Mass for Troubled Times. And the reason was that this was a time when Napoleon was invading Austria. So everyone was a little bit jittery. But before it premiered, Admiral Nelson defeated the French Navy, so it actually ended up with a celebratory title, the Nelson Mass. It's sort of your prototypical classical mass, a really invigorating work as well as beautiful, a typical classical sounding liturgical work. And my top choice for this one is this recording with Sir David Wilcox and the King's College Choir with the London Symphony, recorded in 1962. And there's a wonderful mix of energy and sort of liturgical reverence, you might say, with that boys' choir sound, in addition to excellent soloists. So that I think this one does a great job of bringing across the different elements of the work. Very, very well recorded, and also excellent couplings with Vivaldi Gloria and the Handel Zadok and the Priest that I mentioned earlier. All right, so that is Haydn. Now I want to discuss English 20th century composer Herbert Howells. He was steeped in the Anglican church tradition, and his works tended towards ethereality, these haunting sonorities. Probably his choral masterpiece is considered the Hymnus Paradisi, which is a work that was inspired tragically by the death of his son to polio very suddenly at the age of 9. And this is a work for chorus, orchestra, and soprano and tenor soloists. And it's mainly a work, I think, that brings across this feeling of consolation, although it also has its dramatic points as well. And then there's a shorter work, the Requiem, which is even more peaceful and ethereal. It's actually an a cappella work, so it's just for choir. And actually, some of the material was used in the Hymnus Paradisi later on. For the Hymnus Paradisi, my top choice is what I believe might have been the first recording made in 1970, but still sounding very good. Conducted by Sir David Wilcox with the Bach Choir and the King's College Choir, as well as the New Philharmonia. And it's beautifully played and conducted, as well as the soloists are excellent. The sweet-toned tenor, very tender, Robert Tier. And the beautifully expressive soprano of Heather Harper, and the whole thing culminates in a beautiful, peaceful ending. So a wonderful recording, as well as a coupling. The Finzi Dis Natalis that I recommended in my other video with Wilfred Brown and the composer's son. So an excellent disc. And then for the Requiem, I want to recommend this recording from an American choir, recorded in 2005. This is with Craig Hella Johnson conducting the Conspirare Company of Voices. And this is just a gorgeous sounding recording, just wonderful fullness and depth. The choir is beautifully blended. The seamless transitions from chord to chord with just wonderful tone and clarity. This work does not have the prominent solos that you find in the Hymnus Paradisi, but the solos here are just gorgeously sung with nice rich tone and also seamlessly coming out of the whole so that it all blends very well. So a really beautiful recording that includes other 20th century works, including a 21st century work that was Johnson's own arrangement of Eliza Gilkison's Requiem. Sort of a devotional, simple work, but very powerful, and a perfect way to cap the disc, kind of keeping in the same consoling vein of the Howells Requiem that opens it. All right, so that is Howells. Now let's talk about Czech composer Leos Janáček and his Glagolitic Mass. And I think of this kind of like a Czech version of Brahms's German Requiem. It's called the Glagolitic Mass because it's an Old Church Slavonic. And Janáček himself was not very religious, but he considered this more of a humanist mass with a little bit of a nationalist bent to it, you might say. It featured as much of Janáček's music, of course. It was somewhat based on folk music. Also a lot of rhythmic energy. It has a brass fanfare that opens the piece, like his Sinfonietta, as well as these haunting harmonies. So it's a really diverse, kind of a different type of mass, very much a creature of its time. And for this one, I recommend Karel Anserl with the Czech Philharmonic and Chorus from 1963. Very dramatic, that opening brass fanfare, for example. The chorus sings very passionately, dramatically paced by Anserl. But also beautifully ethereal. For example, the Agnus Dei, the string opening, it sounds very haunting at the beginning. Has nice vibrant sound, like a lot of those Czech recordings for this time. So a wonderful way to get to know this work. And then I also want to recommend an older version from 1951, conducted by Bretislav Bakala, with the Moravian Mixed Chorus and the Brno Radio Orchestra. Bakala was very much a devotee of Janáček's music, and he was from Brno, which is where the work premiered. And this is just a very committed, passionate, soulful performance. The sound is not too bad. It's not ideally clear or full, but in terms of a performance, if you want to investigate this work, this is just a really passionately advocating performance. All right, and then going from sort of a Czech nationalist work to now a Hungarian nationalist work, we come to Zoltán Kodály and his Psalmus Hungaricus. This is a work that's about 20 minutes long. But it's very, very alive, very, very energetic. It's got one soloist, a tenor, but it's a fairly difficult solo, very, very operatic. It's kind of a requiem for the Hungarian sufferings during time of war. So it's a very personal, soulful work. And for this, I recommend the one conducted by fellow Hungarian István Kertész, and the Brighton Festival Chorus, and with also the Wandsworth School Boys Choir, as well as the London Symphony. And Kertész just brings this obvious passion to the interpretation. The tenor is also Hungarian, Lajos Kozma, and he really tackles that difficult solo also very passionately. Beautifully recorded as well, and beautifully sung. So excellent way to get to know the work. Incidentally, I want to mention the end of this work ends very softly, and in the bass line you have an A below the bass clef. Which you hear very distinctly in this recording. It's one of the lowest notes actually in the choral repertoire, even lower than that famous B flat in the Rachmaninoff All Night Vigil. So little touch that I wanted to mention is included in this work. All right, now we come to a romantic masterwork from Felix Mendelssohn. He dipped his feet also into the English oratorio tradition. In fact, this work was commissioned to be performed in England originally, and like the Creation, it's sung in both German and English. Elijah. And this has your sort of Old Testament fire and brimstone. For example, there's a moment where Elijah is confronting idol worshippers. And it's a very dramatic work, wonderfully inventive and melodic. I've always loved this one. I like the way also the numbers kind of flow seamlessly from one to the next. It really keeps you involved in the story. And for this one, my top choice is a German version conducted by Wolfgang Sawallisch and Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra, which is the orchestra that premiered the work in Germany, as well as the Leipzig Gewandhaus Radio Chorus. And this one just has that prototypical romantic warmth to it that I think accentuates the lyrical melodic beauty of the writing. The all-important Elijah role is sung by Theo Adam, who was known as Wotan, so he has a very commanding presence. We also have Ellie Ameling sounding gorgeous in the soprano solo, as well as a young Peter Schreier singing the tenor solo. But especially the chorus, I think, is what really shines in this recording. They sound really clear. Really sing passionately and dramatically. There's the chorus Dank sei der Gott, which ends the first part. Thanks be to God, which really comes across energetically in this version. Very well recorded as well. Now, if you do want it in English, there is a classic version from the same time, late 60s, as that other one. And this was conducted by Raphael Frubeck de Burgos with the New Philharmonia Orchestra and Chorus. And among your soloists here, singing the part of Elijah in English is Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, and he brings that leader sensibility to it. He's powerful and dramatic, but also nuanced. For example, that gorgeous solo in the second part, It Is Enough. He just sings that really poignantly. Also the alto soloist, Janet Baker. You have some wonderful alto solos in this work. For example, O Rest in the Lord, which she just sings gorgeously. You also have a radiant tenor soloist, Nikolai Gedda. The chorus sounds very beautiful, and it's dramatically paced by de Burgos. So this is a classic English language version that I also wouldn't want to be without. Now, for a little bit more recent version in digital sound, we have this one conducted by Paul Daniel with the Edinburgh Festival Chorus and the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. And what you have to mention first with this recording is, I can't imagine what it would be. Oh, yeah, the guy playing Elijah. Bryn Terfel. He just knocks it out of the park. One of the great oratorio solo recordings. Just rich and powerful and expressive and nuanced. And to hear it in English, I do think if you are an English-speaking person, it does help with the narrative. And the choir here sounds very clear. They're very crisp. There's nice punch to the choral numbers. You also have Renee Fleming sounding very lush in the soprano solo. as well as John Mark Ainsley is a sweet-toned tenor. So this is also an excellent English version recording in excellent sound. And then finally, I want to go back to an old classic version, again from the legendary English choral conductor of the first half of the 20th century, Sir Malcolm Sargent. This was recorded in 1947. Again, one of these Dutton Laboratory remasterings that's really, really excellent for its time. Nice clarity to it despite its age. And this is just this old-fashioned romantic reading that I just love. I think it does an incredible job of bringing across the different emotions with its warmth and flexibility. Harold Williams is Elijah. He sounds very properly British. Of course, this work has its roots in the English oratorio tradition, and he sings not only very powerfully, but also beautifully emotionally expressive. For example, that tender aria, "It Is Enough." He really just does a beautiful job on that. And then following that, you have the women's voices in the choir by themselves singing "Lift Thine Eyes," very angelic sounding. Followed then by probably the most famous chorus in the whole work, "He Watching Over Israel," phrased just really beautifully. You have the legendary bell-tone soprano, Isabel Bailey, sounding beautiful. So in my mind, one of the legendary choral recordings, period, and a great artifact, you might say, of the English oratorio tradition preserved in just a wonderful remastering. All right, now we go way back to really the beginning of the Baroque period. Claudio Monteverdi, Italian composer, who sort of is the bridge between the Renaissance and Baroque. And this work, Vespro della Beata Vergine, Vespers of the Blessed Virgin, also often referred to as the Vespers of 1610. It's sort of functions as that bridge, almost like Beethoven's Eroica between the classic and the Romantic period. It takes that basic meditative Renaissance choral tradition, but spruces it up. It makes it more theatrical. I'd even say sensual. It's a really rich, beautiful sounding work. I'll tell you a story. I was working at a music store about 30 years ago that had a fairly small classical section, just one row. And I used to put on this recording of the Monteverdi Vespers quite often because I loved hearing it with all those speakers, that surround sound effect. And people used to eat it up. And I remember this one fellow, he asked me what it was, and I pointed out to him where it was in the bins. And then he walked around for about 10 minutes, and he was ready to buy it. And then both copies had already been bought, so I had to sell him the one that I was playing. And I remember as he was leaving, he was Australian, and he said, "So I guess Monteverdi's pretty hot, eh?" I never forgot that. Yes, Monteverdi's pretty hot. And my top choice for this work is actually the recording that I was playing in that record store, and that is John Eliot Gardiner, his second recording with the Monteverdi Choir and the English Baroque soloists, as well as His Majesty's cornets and sagbutts. This was the one recorded in 1989 at St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice. Incidentally, that is where Monteverdi ended up for the rest of his life. He was originally in Mantua, and he was horribly abused by his employer, and he wrote the Vespers as sort of an audition piece to get out of Mantua. So it probably was performed at the St. Mark's Cathedral. We don't know for sure, but here it just sounds gorgeously opulent. It's a little bit muddy with the reverberation, but I think it still works for this piece. The singing here is just incredible. The dexterity, the rhythmic excitement, even without being too fast. Like, for example, the Nisi Dominus movement. It's this wonderful, joyful, rhythmic, energetic movement. But then there are also movements of more etherealness. For example, in the Laudate Pueri movement, there's this moment in the middle where the women's voices come in on this soft, the words are ut collecet eum, and it just sounds like voices in heaven. It's just so gorgeous. So to me, this is one of the classics of all choral recordings. Just incredibly gorgeous and well done. However, this is an incredible masterwork, and I would not want to be with just one recording. And we actually have one from just a few years ago, 2022, that I want to recommend. Raphael Pichon and Pygmalion. Like Gardner, I think this one accentuates the theatricality of the work. It even maybe goes a little bit further, even more daring in its dramatic impact. Very crisp and clear as well, probably more so than the more opulent Gardner, so you can actually hear the text a little bit more, and just really beautifully done. And I think we can already say after just a few years that this is also one of the great Monteverdi Vesper recordings. We also have this one from 2004 with Robert King and the King's Consort, which I think is another one that accentuates the more theatrical, dramatic elements, while also being beautifully sung and beautifully played. This one really has a gorgeous sound to it, wonderful solo work. So another one accentuating the grand opulence and theatricality of this work. Now, for something a little bit different, we have this earlier version from 1984 conducted by Andrew Parrott with the Taverner Consort. Now, this is a less theatrical version, I would say. This one accentuates more the liturgical aspect. It's a little bit drier, both in the treatment of the music as well as the recording. And I think it works. The Ave Maris Stella movement towards the end is really beautifully done here. Also beautiful solo work from Nigel Rodgers and Emma Kirkby. So this one's a little bit different than the ones I just mentioned, but I think it accentuates a different aspect of the work. And then we also have this one from 1974, which I think also brings that kind of reverential aspect, the spiritual aspect. This was conducted by Hans Martin Schneid with the Regensburger Domspatzen and the Hamburger Bläserkreis für Alte Musik, brass ensemble for ancient music. Now, this is a period performance, but it's a little bit grander in scale. It's a little bit, there's a little more warmth and size to it, but it still has that kind of more reverential aspect. Partly because he uses boy sopranos as well. This one is really a majestic version. The final movements, the more tranquil movements, Ave Maris Stella as well as the Magnificat, really conclude the work gorgeously. So again, another recording that kind of gives us another aspect of the work. As does this version from 1988 with Jordi Savall and the Coro del Centro Musica Antica di Padova, as well as La Capella Real. This is more of a lush sounding, I might even say sensuous version. Some of the text is actually from the Song of Solomon, which is actually about sensuous dialogue between lovers. So that is an aspect of the work, and I think it comes through here. There's a richness to this version and a beauty to the sound, both of the singing and the recording quality that really, again, it gives us another aspect of the work. And along the same vein, I would say, is this one from 1986, conducted by Philippe Herreweg with his La Chapelle Royale, Collegium Vocal Ghent, as well as the Les Sacboutières de Toulouse. You have to use these old instruments, incidentally. I've been in a couple of Monteverdi Vesper recordings, and we usually have to bring in antique players from we have to bring them from other places to augment our own orchestra. But anyways, this version I think also brings across that ethereal kind of sensuous quality. With Herweg, of course, you often have the beauty of sound. This one has a little bit more of a gentleness to it, as opposed to, say, the more dramatic Pygmalion recording. And it's a really wonderful way to hear the work. It's almost like taking a bath in beautiful, luxurious sound. Just another a wonderful recording of this really wonderful masterwork. All right, so that's the Vespers. Now, Monteverdi was also known for his madrigals that he composed throughout his life, and he arranged them into separate books. The madrigal, that was another area that Monteverdi really brought Renaissance music into the realm of the Baroque. He developed the madrigal into being more expressive, more fitting the music to the text as opposed to the text to the music. You have more rhythmic invention as well as a dissonance in the chords. This was actually called the second practice, or I think it's seconda pratica in Italian. I think a good starting point is the book 8 that he arranged at the end of his life, which includes one of the most beautiful madrigals of all, Lamento della Ninfa, where the soprano is singing of her lost love over descending chords. And my top choice for this one is a recording from the late 80s, very well recorded, with Anthony Rulli conducting the Consort of Music. Wonderful clarity and virtuosic singing, but also very expressive as well, but within that contained kind of early Baroque sound. Emma Kirkby sounds just gorgeous in that Lamento della Ninfa, for example, wonderfully clear but also expressive. So a wonderful way to get to know these madrigals. And then I also want to mention a more modern sound recording, an older one from the early 70s, conducted by Raymond Leppard, with members of the Glyndebourne Chorus as well as the English Chamber Orchestra. And yes, this one has a little bit more warmth to it, a little bit more, you might call it romantic expressiveness, operatic sounding, you might say. But I think that fits with Monteverdi. Monteverdi was very known for his really being a pioneer in opera as well. And that expressiveness, that beautiful kind of lushness that they bring to it, I think it accentuates the work. Now, you even have one that goes back further, led by Nadia Boulanger. This is coupled with the Fauré Requiem that we mentioned earlier. This one's much more in the romantic vein, but I think it works. They sing with vibrato, but it's fairly controlled. For example, there's the madrigal Zefiro Torna, which is a beautiful, sensuous work, which I love the expression that they sing that with, the various collections of singers you have here. Recorded in 1937, obviously a little bit dim sound. The solo voices come out obviously a little bit more strongly than the ensemble numbers. Boulanger, incidentally, she was a Monteverdi pioneer herself, and she even had an impact on a young John Eliot Gardner who heard Boulanger in recordings, in performance. So we also have Boulanger to thank for that. So I think this is another one that I think adds to our appreciation of these madrigals. All right, so that is Monteverdi. Now we come to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and another one of the indelible choral classics, the Requiem. This is one that I've always thought is one that a lot of people who are not even classical fans appreciate this work. And yeah, a lot of that might be because of the movie Amadeus, where it's featured so much at the end. But I think it's the work itself. the dramatic impact of it, the depth of the writing, it's just so musically inspired that it's one that I tend to readily recommend to people who are just curious about classical music. Of course, the story around it, you can't get away from that, that he died while writing it. It was completed by his student, Franz Süssmayr. And there's a lot of debate as to whether it was an adequate completion or others have done it better. I'll be honest, for me, I've always been fine with the Süssmayr until something comes along that's more, kind of mind-blowing, I guess, in terms of Mozart's intention. I tend to kind of stick with that one. Now, Süssmayr completed it so that Costanza could submit it to Count Wolsegg. He was the person who, as far as we know, was the one who actually was wanting the Requiem from Mozart so that he could have it performed at the anniversary of his wife's death and then pass it on as his own piece. And he was paying handsomely for it. So the story at the end of Amadeus, there's some truth in that, even if it wasn't Salieri that was doing that. Mozart probably was under a lot of pressure. He died 2 months before the Requiem was due to be performed, and we'll never know. It'll always be a subject of speculation. But you have to admit that the pressure he must have been under, the outpouring of emotion that's so palpable in the work itself. The fact that he died while writing it, it's hard to ignore that as something that was, just simply coincidental. But it is a magnificent work, a powerful work, and one that I think kind of points a little bit towards Romanticism in its dramatic impact. My top choice for this one is one of those versions that I think goes between the older Romantic style and the newer period style, and that's Sir Neville Marriner. This is his second recording with the Academy of St. Martin the Fields Orchestra and Chorus from 1990. Recorded very well. And he did a beautiful version in the 70s as well. I think this one has a little bit more punch and energy in the faster parts, particularly the faster fugues. Excellent soloist as well, and everything just sounds right in terms of the tempos, in terms of heaviness versus lightness. So it's an excellent way to first get to know the Requiem. My next recommendation is one very different, more in the older Romantic tradition, from Karl Böhm. This is a classic from 1971, sung by the Vienna State Opera Chorus as well as the Vienna Philharmonic. And this one is very large, imposing, powerful, dramatic, majestic, recorded fairly reverberantly. It was in the Grand Hall of the Musikverein in Vienna. And I understand some people probably will turn away if they hear this because of the slower tempos, but it works. It really does bring across the passion and the drama of the piece. And in fact, even the faster sections like the Kyrie and the Dies Irae, even at these tempos, there's a energy to it that it comes across very powerfully. Wonderful soloist as well. So this is at least as a supplement a version that I would not want to be without. Now going back to a little bit more of the conventional tempo versions, you might say, we have this from Sir Colin Davis from 1967 with the John Aldous Choir and the BBC Symphony. And this one is more in the sort of Mariner vein. I would say even a little bit more of a powerful version, you might say. But this one has always been considered kind of your conventional classic, very beautifully and powerfully sung, excellent soloists, and very sensible tempo choices from Davis. And then we have, just a few years later, from 1971, Daniel Barenboim, with the same John Aldous Choir and the English Chamber Orchestra. And this one, I would say, goes more into the Romantic vein, not quite as far as Karl Böhm, But Barenboim was a very good Mozart conductor as well as pianist, of course. And this is just a really powerful version. Listen, for example, to the Dies Irae. Just is done very, very passionately and dramatically. A wonderful team of soloists as well. So if you want some power and vigor in your Mozart Requiem, then this is an excellent choice. Going a little further even than that is this one from Leonard Bernstein with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra and Chorus in 1988. This one is just dripping with passion. At some point, it might even seem that he goes a little too far in kind of the dramatic point making. The Lacrimosa, for example, that beautiful slow movement is taken a little bit more kind of deliberately than you might want. But I think the thing that comes across though is the intensity which this work really lends itself to. Excellent sound as well. So this may be not your proverbial top choice, but I think it's a valuable supplement. And then we have some excellent period performances. One is from Philippe Herwegh. This is with Collegium Vocal Ghent as well as the Orchestre des Champs-Élysées, recorded in 1996. And again, as we often get with Herwegh, the first thing you have to talk about is just the beauty of the sound. That they bring that solemnity, that kind of profundity that this work lends itself to. But it's not without its feeling of vigorousness either. The Confitatis, for example, that really, Confitatis, that's done very well here, very energetically. So this is a wonderful period version, as is this one from John Eliot Gardner and the Monteverdi Choir and English Baroque soloists, recorded in 1986. Excellent team of soloists, immaculately performed as you might expect. The chorus especially. Mozart, he learned a lot from Bach in Bach's fugal writing. And of course, Gardner was a specialist in that. And so, especially in those movements, this one is really wonderfully dramatic and energetic. It's maybe missing a little bit of the solemnity in the quieter moments that you find in other recordings. But in terms of dramatic impact particularly, this is a really wonderful recording and excellent sound quality. Now, going to some older versions, I want to mention this one. This is a live recording from 1955, and it's one of those echt German recordings, conducted by Eugen Joachim with the Vienna State Opera Chorus and the Vienna Symphony. It was recorded in the St. Stephen's Dome, right in the heart of Vienna, where Mozart's actual memorial service we presume would have happened there. And actually, I've seen not on this physical disc, but I've seen an online stream that includes the organ prelude they used in the service, that used material from the Requiem, as well as the chants between movements. So it's you get the experience of the church service. But Joachim does a wonderful job pacing the work. He has that solemnity and that spiritual side that he brought to everything he conducted, that sensitivity. Wonderful team of soloists headed by Irmgard Seefried. The Recordare movement. It's a solo quartet movement. It's just really beautifully done. So this is an excellent version. It's a little bit noisy. It is a live performance after all, but it's fairly clear. And then another conductor known for Mozart, Bruno Walter. Now, this is his earliest recording. He did a couple of post-war ones, but I'm recommending this one from 1937. This is with the Vienna State Opera Chorus as well as the Vienna Philharmonic. And this is the younger, more kind of alert, passionate Bruno Walter. So you get that energy and fire in the faster movements, as well as the warmth and the humanity. Excellent team of soloists. Elisabeth Schumann, Kerstin Thorborg, She sang the Das Lied von der Erde that Walter recorded back in the 30s, as well as Anton Dramata and Alexander Kipnis. So an excellent team of soloists. And the choral sound actually, despite the older recording, it actually, to my ear, sounds a little bit smoother than his post-war recordings. A beautiful, powerful sound that they bring as well. And then, finally, I want to mention, among historical recordings, this one, Victor de Sabata, conducting the Rome and Turin orchestras, as well as the Italian radio broadcasting chorus. Much more operatic sounding, you might say, not the Echt German that I was just talking about with Joachim, but this one is just a really moving, profound interpretation. Very, very dramatic. Lots of dramatic extremes. For example, between the Kyrie, where that fast fugue, very, very dramatic, and then that beautiful contemplative lacrimosa. Victor de Sabata was one of the great 20th century conductors, of whom unfortunately we have too little on record. But he was a master at dramatic pacing, and this, even if with the dim sound and the muddy chorus and the sort of romantic interpretation, if you love the Mozart Requiem, I think you should at least sample this, because it's a really moving, impactful performance. All right, now we come to an earlier Mozart choral work, the C minor Mass, the Great Mass, or the Grossmesse. However, it is anything but a gross mess. This one is more classical, traditionally classical compared to the Requiem. It's beautifully proportioned. It was a time when Mozart's star was really rising. He had just moved to Vienna, and he actually returned to Salzburg to perform this with his wife as the soprano soloist. And maybe not a coincidence, the soprano solo is featured quite a bit in this work, maybe most famously in the opening Kyrie. But that reportedly was not the only impact that Costanza, his wife, might have had. She apparently was enamored of the fugues of Bach and Handel that Mozart would play on the keyboard, and she encouraged him to use those fugues in his works. And this work does use a lot of that. It's a very magisterial but also energetic work, really gorgeous. And my top choice for this one is a recording from 1973 conducted by Raymond Lepard with the John Aldous Choir and the New Philharmonia. This one, I think, is more on the, I would call it the classically restrained solemn vein, and it really works. Particularly the soprano soloist, Ileana Kotrubas. She brings to that opening Kyrie this sort of dignity, a little bit understated, that is really gorgeous and works. It also is very powerful in the dramatic sections as well. You also have Kyrie te Canua as the second soprano, sounding radiantly beautiful. So I think this is a version that, compared to the Requiem, the more classically constrained C minor Mass, I think this really works. However, if you do want a more dramatic, more extrovert version, we have this one from Leonard Bernstein, from 1990, very late Bernstein, with the Bavarian Radio Symphony and chorus. And this one is just dripping with passion and electricity, as we come to expect. If you're familiar with his Requiem recording, the choral fugues, the chorus really sings with this power and energy, and it's also very well recorded, nice fullness and detail. So other end of the spectrum, valid as well, and I would not want to be without it. And then finally, we have this one from Herbert von Karajan. from 1981 with the Vienna Singverein and the Berlin Philharmonic. And Karajan, some of his Mozart can sound a little bit overly, you might say, romantic, maybe soupy, but I think this recording is a real treasure. He brings that warmth and that luscious majesty that really works well here. And the soprano soloist, Barbara Hendricks, really knocks it out of the park. One of the best on record, sounding gorgeously vibrant. She might be worth the disc itself, but overall, it's an excellent recording and another classic version. And then finally, for Mozart, I want to mention his earlier Coronation Mass. He wrote this while he was the organist in Salzburg at the Salzburg Cathedral. It's a shorter work. It's a very energetic work. And in this recording, it gets the full royal treatment, if you will. By the way, it was called the Coronation Mass because it was used in coronations much later. It actually wasn't even intended that way by Mozart. But in this recording, we have Raphael Kubelik conducting the Bavarian Radio Symphony Chorus and Orchestra, recorded in the mid-70s. And it's wonderfully paced, wonderfully sung, very, very powerfully, nice rhythmic energy. It also features a wonderful soloist in the soprano solo Agnus Dei, Edith Matisse. It's one of those solos that sounds like it came right out of The Marriage of Figaro, and she sings it with beautiful phrasing. And then in this disc, this includes her Exsultate Jubilate that I recommend in my other video, as well as the shorter choral work Ave Verum Corpus. This sort of more gentle, mellow, beautifully reverential work that's beautifully sung here. So an overall winner of a disc. All right. Now we come to 20th century composer Carl Orff and his hit work, Carmina Burana. When I used to be a CD store, or what do you call it, record store now? I don't know. At the time, CD was the thing. But when I used to be a clerk, I can't count the number of times that if someone knew that I was the classical guy, they would come and ask about this piece. It's a piece that kind of bridges the different musical tastes, you might say, and for good reason. It's a very entertaining work, very theatrical, wonderfully rhythmic, as are a lot of the 20th century choral works that we're going to talk about. It uses medieval texts that are sort of irreverently sensual, and a lot of dances, sensual and entrancing. So just a wonderfully theatrical work. And my top choice for this one is the classic, I would say. I generally, in these videos, I don't ever call something definitive. I hesitate to use that word. But if there is one that I would call definitive, it's this one. Eugen Joachim with the Deutsche Opera Chorus and Orchestra, recorded in 1967. It has the authority of the composer's blessing as well, and it just checks every box. It's wonderfully recorded, wonderful vibrancy. The chorus is fantastic, nice body to the sound, rhythmic dexterity. These soloists are fantastic. You have Gundula Janowitz, a beautifully sung soprano solo, and then Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, passionate and dramatic in the baritone solo, and Joachim really paces everything just right. I imagine he probably consulted with the composer when he prepared for this, but just a real classic and winner of a disc. I do have one other recommendation for Carmina Burana, and that's this one from actually just a couple years before that one. This was from 1965. This was Raphael Frubeck du Burgos with the New Philharmonia Orchestra and Chorus. And this one, it doesn't have quite, I would say, the theatrical vibrancy of the Jochum. This one's a little bit more, it's got a little bit more warmth to it, a little bit more of an elemental, sensual feeling to it, which I think brings out another aspect of the work. Very sumptuously performed and recorded, beautifully divine solo, the soprano solo from Lucia Pop. So that's really gorgeous. So I would say, as much as I call the Jochum definitive, I would say as an alternate take, you might say, I think the De Burgos is also valuable. All right, now we come to 20th century Estonian composer, late 20th century Estonian composer, Arvo Pärt, who had a very distinct style. It was actually called Tintinnabuli. It was sort of based on Gregorian chant style, lots of stillness, these haunting sonorities, really captivating and meditative. And this disc brings together three of his choral works, the Magnificat, the Berliner Messe, and the Te Deum. Magnificat might be the easiest one to get your feet wet. It's a little shorter, it's a cappella, and you get a sense of the style, of this sort of meditative stillness and these haunting sonorities. It's a good place, a good piece to put on late at night if you're wanting to get into that meditative state. The Te Deum and Berliner Messe are a little bit longer works that also utilize orchestra. And all of them are beautifully sung on this recording by the Estonian Philharmonic Chamber Choir in a gorgeous acoustic, conducted by a fellow Estonian, Tõnu Kaljuste. And so, excellent way to first get to know Pärt's choral music. Next, we come to another 20th century composer, Francis Poulenc. And probably his most famous choral work, the Gloria. Poulenc had this kind of elegant avant-garde style. He used kind of funky offbeat rhythms, as well as the sonorities that kind of kept you on your toes. The Gloria is one of those works that utilizes those kind of jarring rhythms as well as those beautiful inventive harmonies that he used. There is one soloist, a soprano, who is used quite a bit throughout the work. And on this recording, we have Georges Prêtre conducting the Radio Diffusion Télévision Radio. What did I say? The Radio Diffusion Télévision Française chorus and orchestra in 1961. And actually, they were the group that premiered the work. So they have the obvious authority. Rosanna Carteri is gorgeous on the soprano solo. Nice color and finesse. And the chorus also sings very fervently, really accentuating that rhythmic inventiveness of Poulenc. So an excellent way to get to know the Gloria. Next we come to another 20th century composer, this time a Russian, Sergei Prokofiev. And his work, Alexander Nevsky. Now, this is an interesting one in that it was actually composed as a soundtrack for a patriotic Soviet film of the same name about a 13th century Russian prince, Nevsky, who led the Russians in a valiant defense from invaders. And the chorus functions as sort of telling the story as well as communicating themes of Russian patriotism. The battle on ice is sort of the big climax of the work, and it's a very entertaining work. This is another one I would say that, like Orff's Carmina Burana, I've known a lot of people who are not necessarily classical fans who like the theatricality of this piece. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, that's something you often get with the combination of choral and orchestra, this kind of theatrical excitement from works like this. My top choice is from 1961, an early stereo version conducted by Thomas Shippers with the Westminster Choir and the New York Philharmonic. And this one is just really exciting, wonderfully paced by Shippers. The Westminster Choir sings very passionately. The New York Philharmonic is on their virtuosic best. The Battle on Ice, for example, has a climax that is just so overwhelming in its impact. And then that's followed by the Field of the Dead, which is featuring an alto soloist. And here we have Lily Chookasian, an American Armenian, who just sounds so rich and powerful and dignified. Just a gorgeous solo. There's an interesting story actually behind that. Apparently Shippers discovered Chookasian by hearing her on the radio, but then he forgot her name. And he actually had to go to great lengths to track her down. And then he wanted to use her in this recording, and I'm glad he did, because the results are really magical, and it really caps just a wonderful recorded performance. Now, it is early stereo. If you want something in a little bit newer sound, not quite digital, but almost digital, you might say, 1979, we have this one, conducted by Claudio Abbado with the London Symphony Chorus and Orchestra, and yeah, you get a little bit more of that orchestral detail and color, which is so important in Prokofiev in general, and in this work, the way he uses the orchestra to communicate the narrative. So you hear that here, very, very powerful and rich recording, probably considered by many people to be the reference recording. However, we have an even earlier version that I would say in terms of recording quality gives us even better detail. This is from 1959, one of those RCA living stereo recordings conducted by Fritz Reiner with the Chicago Symphony and Chorus. Now this one's in English, which is a little bit odd. I have to admit, for my ears, when I hear it in English, to me, it doesn't quite sound right. It's something I have to get used to. But they sing it very passionately. And Reiner paces it wonderfully, and the recording quality is just wonderful. To hear the orchestral color and detail, for example, the sound of the chimes in the final movement. The Chicago Symphony, of course, was a well-oiled machine under Fritz Reiner, and that combined with the RCA recording quality just gave us magical results, and this is one of them. All right, so now we come to late 17th century English composer Henry Purcell, who in his short life wrote quite a bit of vocal music, odes and anthems, one of those popular of which is the Ode on St. Cecilia's Day, also known as Hail Bright Cecilia. A very celebratory work. Again, St. Cecilia was the patron of music. And this is a work that also celebrates music. It features the different instruments. It's a nice example of an elegant time, back in the English Baroque era. And for this one, my top choice comes from Charles Mackerras, conducting the Ambrosian Singers as well as the Tiffin Choir, with the English Chamber Orchestra. This was recorded in 1969. And this is one of those that I've said before in this period for Mackerras, like his 60s Handel Messiah recording. It combines the qualities of modern sound, modern instrument sound, that warmth, with also Baroque sensitivity, nice elegance. And in this recording especially, there's this nice celebratory exuberance that really brings across, the Hail Bright Cecilia theme. So I think if you're wanting to love this work for the first time, I think this is an excellent gateway into it. All right, now we come to 20th century Russian pianist, of course, and composer Sergei Rachmaninoff. And his masterpiece, I think one of the masterpieces of choral repertoire, the All-Night Vigil. I knew this piece for a long time as the Vespers, but that actually is a misnomer because Vespers is only a part of the All-Night Vigil, but you still often see it subtitled Vespers. This is just a gorgeous work. It's a cappella, it's just choir, lasts about an hour. It's based. It's very chant-like in what it's in what the material is based on, but it utilizes Rachmaninoff's harmonic and melodic invention. Amazingly, he wrote this apparently in only 2 weeks, but it's just such a diverse, dynamic work, from the loud to the soft, the fast to the slow. One of the unique elements is the way he utilizes the basses. A lot of low bass sound throughout the work. Most famously is the end of the fifth movement when it descends down, just the basses alone, to a low B flat, one of the lowest notes in all of the choral repertoire. The legend is Rachmaninoff was told, "You'll never find a bass choir that can do that." And Rachmaninoff said, "I know my countrymen." It's true. The Russians are known for their bass singing, and you definitely get a lot of that in this work. My top choice for this one is an idiomatic Russian version from the 80s, from 1986, conducted by Vladislav Chernushenko with the St. Petersburg Capella. And they just sing this with such passion, as well as detail and nuance, beautiful color, wonderful pacing. It's just a gorgeous performance. One of my favorite of all choral recordings, period. They just sing like they have this music in their blood. And then the tenor soloist I really want to point out, Sergei Rokozitsa. He just sings with this gorgeous delicacy and beauty of tone and softness that really sounds perfect for this music. There actually are a couple of earlier Chernushenko recordings with the Glinka choir, and I'll be honest, I have no idea if the Glinka and St. Petersburg choirs are like the same or the same personnel. They might be. They were recorded in, I believe, the late 70s and a little earlier in the 80s on Melodia and Olympia. This version is a little better recorded and I think a little bit more polished. It's on a French label, the Harmonia Mundi France, also called Chant du Monde or Saison Russe. It's easy to identify actually because it starts out with a really low bass solo singer introducing the chant, like really, really low, like that. So you can't miss it. Just a really, really gorgeous recording. Another part I want to mention is the movement number 7. There's this chord in the middle, this chord of like just several different notes all at once, and has this kaleidoscopic effect. And in this recording, it just seems to extend out into eternity. Just so many musical details that are just so wonderfully done in this recording. The low basses, they definitely bring it at the end of that fifth movement. So that's my top choice. I also want to mention another, quote-unquote, echt Russian recording. This is the very first one, the classic, Alexander Sveshnikov, with the State Academic Russian Choir of the USSR. In 1965, the work was actually already half a century old, and it's kind of surprising that this was the very first recording. It might have had something to do with the Soviet takeover and maybe the not being too fond of religiosity perhaps, but in any case, this one has a lot of the same qualities as that Chernushenko recording. I would say it's a little bit even more kind of raw sounding, maybe not as polished, but very impassioned. There's this kind of swelling effect when you look at the musical score. You see these hairpins in the score, which means get loud, get soft, get loud, often really quickly, and you hear that here. You hear those big swells. The basses, they have that deep growly sound. The recording is fairly clear, fairly good stereo, just not quite as pristine and polished as you might get today. So definitely another classic version. Now, if you do want a style of singing that's more kind of the traditional choral sound, the more pristine sound, we have this one from actually a Renaissance / contemporary specialist, Paul Hillier. This is with the Estonian Philharmonic Chamber Choir, recorded in 2004. And it does have that pristine clarity, but as well as that deep opulence, that deep bass sound, for example, and with a beautiful, beautiful recording quality. It's really something to hear a work like this, an a cappella work, performed and recorded so immaculately. It is a little bit faster paced, I think, than the traditional way. Sometimes I think it could breathe a little bit more, maybe, but at the same time, I'm just so wowed by the sound of it that I have to recommend this one as well. One more I want to recommend, slightly even newer, from 2011, is this one. Sigvards Klava conducting the Latvian radio choir. And this one does breathe a little bit more, I'd say, than the Hillier. It also, the chorus sings the solo movements, and so there's no soloist, but they do so very well. And this one is just really beautiful sounding. I would say, especially in the treble voices, it has more of a kind of an angelic feel to it. This work, it might surprise people when they hear the All Night Vigil and they're used to the more schmaltzy Rachmaninoff. When they hear this work and it sounds so dense and intense. But there is a moment in the penultimate movement where the sopranos sing this melody, da da dee da da dee da 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 da, where I always think to myself, oh, now that's the Rachmaninoff I know. Anyways, you hear that beautifully here. The treble sound, the kind of angelic high sound, really is accentuated in this recording. Beautiful recording quality as well. All right, now we come to a pioneering atonal composer, Arnold Schoenberg. But like his masterwork for Nacht, this was actually a work that came from his more tonal days. This is the Gurrelieder. And this work, it's a choral work by name, but it really sounds more like an opera. It actually sounds kind of like a Wagner opera. In fact, the first part is a dialogue between lovers, which really makes you think of Tristan and Isolde. It has that kind of chromaticism to it, in fact. So you have Voldemar the tenor and Tona the soprano who are in love. Then Tona dies at the end of part one. And maybe the high point of the whole work is the Wood Dove song, where the alto dramatically tells us of her death. And in the second part, Voldemar is just bereft of grief. He's mad at God. He summons his vassals from the grave. But then at the end, they kind of retreat back, and then the sun comes out, and there's this kind of hope for a new day. So it kind of ends on a hopeful note. So it really is very much like a late romantic work. The chorus actually doesn't even appear until the second part. My top choice for this one is a recording from 1995 conducted by Giuseppe Sinopoli with the Dresden State Opera Chorus as well as the Staatskapelle Dresden. And this one really indulges in that romantic spirit. There's this lushness and warmth. That first part, between the dialogues between the two lovers, wonderfully paced by Sinopoli. He really delves into it. And then the second part, where the chorus arrives, really dramatically done. Nice sound quality as well. The soloists are excellent. It's actually a trio of Americans. You have Thomas Moser is the tenor, very very expressive Voldemar. You have a rich-toned Tona, the soprano, Deborah Voigt. And then Jennifer Larmore sings the Wood Dove song, and she just brings the house down. So powerfully done. So an excellent recording if you're wanting to get to know the Gurrelieder. And now we come to that pioneering 20th century composer Igor Stravinsky. and his choral masterpiece, the Symphony of Psalms. Not a particularly long work. Very economical, as we come to expect from Stravinsky, and this is a work that displays his rhythmic energy, the sort of jarring rhythms, but it's also very contemplative. It ends very, very beautifully, kind of like a meditation. A really inventive work. And my top choice for this one is from Choral and Searle and the Czech Philharmonic and Chorus from 1966. And I think this recording has a good balance between being dramatic and full-toned and impassioned, but also grounded, as you need to be with Stravinsky, with those rhythms. Very well recorded as well. It has that kind of vibrant sound we get from Superphon, vintage 60s Superphon sound. So an excellent way to get to know the work. I do also want to mention the composer's own version from 1963 with the Toronto Festival Singers and the CBC Symphony. As you would expect with Stravinsky, this one has a little bit more of a drier, disciplined approach. And that works well too. I mean, who am I to argue with the composer? Where I notice it especially is in that kind of funereal ending, the Laudate passage. It's really effective. The chorus is not quite as full toned as, like, for example, the Czech chorus I just mentioned, but they're obviously well drilled by the composer. And this is definitely a recording I would not want to be without for the Symphony of Psalms. And then we have another work I want to mention by Stravinsky, Les Noces, which means the wedding. Now that's in French. The work is actually in Russian. It's describing a Russian wedding feast. It was dedicated to Sergei Diaghilev, the impresario of the Ballet Russe, but that was located in Paris, so hence the title is Les Noces. Really an energetic work, quite a lot of like cacophony of sound, you might say, lots of use of percussion. It's a work that utilizes soloist, chorus, and orchestra. And my top choice comes from Leonard Bernstein, his 1978 recording with the English Bach Festival Choir and Percussion Ensemble. Bernstein was always very good in Stravinsky. He was always good at that exciting rhythmic inflection, and you get that here. There's that energy, and the chorus and orchestra. They manage to navigate the difficult writing very effectively, and this is also coupled with his funky mass, another beautiful choral work. So an excellent version of Les Noces and an excellent choral disc in general. Now we come to a 20th century English composer, Michael Tippett, and a work he wrote during World War II called A Child of Our Time, a very modern sounding work. This was actually inspired by the story of Herschel Greenspan, who was a young Jewish man who came to Paris with his family, fleeing the Nazis. And he ended up actually assassinating a Nazi official. And this was used as a pretense in Germany for Kristallnacht, which was essentially the event, the series of pogroms through Germany that many people look at as the beginning of the Holocaust. So a very heavy topic, obviously, but Tippett actually, in the work, he uses that story to depict oppression of all types. He actually utilizes African American spirituals quite a bit in the choruses. It's also got a lot of intricate writing, very difficult. I've performed it before, and I remember it being kind of a difficult piece to learn, but a very beautiful, profound modern work. And my top choice for this one is the premiere recording from 1957, conducted by John Pritchard, featuring the Royal Liverpool Chorus and Orchestra. First off, I have to mention the chorus. They sing very fervently and passionately, very dramatically paced by Pritchard. The soloists are excellent. Elsie Morrison, very soulful in the soprano solo. The chorus does a great job with the African American spiritual movements and fairly good sounding stereo. So this is the one I would recommend if you're first coming to this work. Next, turn of the 20th century composer Ralph Vaughan Williams from England, and his beautiful, sensitive, ethereal choral music. This disc combines some wonderful works together, including the Serenade to Music, which is written for 16 different soloists who also combine together to form a choir. They have little like solo bits throughout. Generally a fairly delicate, melodic, beautiful piece. Then a couple of pieces that feature baritone soloists, the 5 mystical songs, as well as the Fantasia on Christmas carols. And then and those are really ethereal works as well. The 5 mystical songs are just what they sound like, very kind of haunting and mystical, very, very beautiful writing. And then the Fantasia on Christmas carols is a beautiful kind of shorter work, often done at Christmas time. And then finally, the Flos Campi is a work that, it reminds me a little bit of the Lark Ascending. It features a solo viola, very, very kind of quiet and still, and then you have this wordless choir in the background. All those pieces are featured on this disc, conducted by Matthew Best with the Corridon Singers, featuring the baritone Thomas Allen, who does a wonderful job in those baritone solos. Beautiful ethereal sound to the choir, and also the sound quality, and very well paced by Best. Just an excellent collection of shorter Vaughan Williams works. However, I also want to mention, for that first work I mentioned, the Serenade to Music, the premiere recording. So I mentioned that there are 16 soloists in the Serenade to Music. They are actually notated in the score that this was written for these 16 people, and then it indicates, but if they're not available, you can substitute others. I think, 90 years later, we probably usually have to do that. But anyways, this features those original 16 singers. This was, I believe, around 10 days after the premiere at the Jubilee concert. Again, one of those Dutton Laboratory remasterings, so it sounds fairly clear. And it's conducted by the dedicee of the work, Sir Henry Wood. It's a little bit more operatic sounding. These were soloists after all, but they sing it very fervently. And I especially like Wood's pacing of the work. It's very sensitive. The orchestral color actually comes out very nicely in this remastering. So somewhat of a historical document, you might say, but I think if you love the work, it's also one that you should at least sample once. All right. Now we come to, I guess in this survey, the last of the humongous choral masterworks, one of those Mount Rushmore of choral works, Verdi's Requiem. This work is one that it's probably most famous for the electric choral numbers, particularly the Dies Irae. That fiery choral number with the bass drum. And then the tuba mirum that follows it. I've been in the choir for this before, and when you hear the build-up in the tuba mirum of the brass building up, I can't tell you what it feels like, especially as a bass singer, knowing that we're the ones who come in first with the tuba mirum. I mean, you're just so ready. So it's probably most famous for that, but actually most of the work sounds like an opera, featuring operatic soloists. At the time of its composition, it was actually called, termed by others, a religious work in opera clothings, or was it an opera work in religious clothing? One of the two. It was dedicated to Alessandro Manzoni, an Italian writer who Verdi was inspired by, not just his writing but his political views as well. And yeah, it is almost more like an opera that just happens to also feature a ton of chorus. But we can't forget that it's also a religious work in spirit. And I think that does come across, and we're going to talk about some of the recordings and how they bring that element across. But I think in combining those elements of the spiritual and the operatic, I think that's part of the secret of the success of this work, why it's so universally beloved. My top choice for this one, I think for a recording like this that really does make full use of the theatricality of the chorus and orchestra combination, you really do want good sound. And so this one from 2001, I think, fits the bill. It is a live recording, but you can't really tell. There's maybe a little bit of noise like right before they begin, but otherwise it sounds like a studio recording. This is conducted by Claudio Abbado, with the Swedish Radio Chorus and the Erik Erikson Chamber Choir, with the Berlin Philharmonic. And the sound quality has wonderful depth and richness, very, very sumptuous and warm, nice detail as well. And I think Abbado's interpretation is an excellent way to get your feet wet in this work. It's a very moving interpretation, but it still brings the excitement at those peak moments as well. Beautifully sung by these choruses. I usually can't go wrong with Swedish choruses. They sound really dramatic in the Dies Irae, as well as the Libera Me, the chorus that ends the entire work. In that Libera Me, you also have the soprano solo that is featured. In this case, Angela Gheorghiu, who sings really intensely and passionately. And then her husband at the time, Roberto Alagna, wonderfully eloquent, expressive as the tenor soloist. So that's my top choice. Next, I actually want to mention a recording that is, believe it or not, in mono. So now we're going away from the pristine sound, but the performance is just so good that I have to mention it next. And that is the one from Victor de Sabata, with the La Scala Opera Chorus and Orchestra. This was recorded in 1954. It is in mono. It doesn't have that fullness that you would necessarily want, although it is fairly clear and present. But the interpretation is just wonderful. It's a little bit on the slower side, but it picks its spots. At the exciting moments, it's really dramatic and electric. Victor de Sabata was one of the great 20th century conductors, particularly at dramatic pacing. We think of probably the most celebrated opera recording of all time, his Puccini Tosca, recorded just a year earlier with Maria Callas. And his gift for dramatic pacing was evident there, and I think a huge part of why it's so beloved for all this time. I would say the same qualities exist here. The Dies Irae is just so beautifully dramatically paced, going into the Tuba Mirum. But then he also accentuates the more spiritual side. He slows down the tempo for example, the Lacrimosa, which has a profound effect. And then the quartet of soloists is about as good as you'll ever find on record. Elizabeth Schwarzkopf is the soprano, a little bit younger Schwarzkopf, and she proves that you don't have to be a Verdian soprano necessarily to succeed in this work, sounding very intense, just like Gheorghiu in that Libera Me, very fierce and intense. And then the mezzo, Aurelio Dominguez, really dramatic, powerful, rich-toned mezzo. The tenor, Giuseppe Di Stefano, same tenor that De Sabata conducted in that Tosca recording, sounding very powerful and heroic. And then what can you say about the bass? Cesare Siepi, one of the greatest basses on record, that deep, velvety tone that he finessed so well. And then you have the La Scala chorus. La Scala in Milan. That's where Verdi lived. That's where a lot of his operas were premiered. They just sing this with such passion. Listen, for example, in the Recordare, the Rex Tremende, in the middle of the Dies Irae movement, where the basses come in, that snarly, growly sound. They just roar like that. And in the other exciting movements, the Sanctus, for example, just a really, really electric recording that I recommend it right beside the Abbado for that reason, because it's obviously not in stereo or even, not in digital or even stereo, but I think the recording is so good that it's one that you should definitely check out. Only a few years later, but now a stereo recording, we have this classic version from Fritz Reiner with the Vienna Singverein and the Vienna Philharmonic, recorded in 1960. And the surprise here is that we tend to think of Reiner as a kind of a just the facts kind of guy, but this is a really devotional interpretation. He actually takes it much slower than the norm, similar to De Sabata, but it's really effective. It really makes for a profound experience while still having the power in the exciting moments. Excellent group of soloists, Leontyne Price, that lush Verdian soprano sound. She brings that power. We have Jussi Björling sounding heroically beautiful on the tenor solo, tragically just 3 months before he died. And then the bass, Giorgio Tozzi, really firm, strong bass. So another classic recording, and I think actually one of Fritz Reiner's greatest recordings as well. A few years later, much better recording quality, one of the best actually, vintage Decca, is this one from Georg Schulte with the Vienna State Opera Chorus and the Vienna Philharmonic from 1967. And this one, it pulls no punches. It is much more on the direct side. In the Dies Irae, you hear that the bass drums so clearly as you did on those older Toscanini recordings. Wonderful quartet of soloists. The mezzo is Marilyn Horne, sounding very firm and rich-toned. Luciano Pavarotti is the tenor, sounding lyrical. This is back in his beardless days, really, really vibrant. Marta Talvella, one of the best basses around. And then Joan Sutherland. We don't think of her as a Verdian singer. And she is a little bit more reserved, I would say, in the Liberame than some others maybe, but she sings beautifully, and especially in the ensemble numbers. They just sound so good as a group. The Vienna chorus sings very passionately. And it's a really one of those kind of exciting, hair-raising performances. Maybe you might argue not as nuanced as some, but I think for a work like this, you want to have that recording that is just so illustrious in terms of the production values, the sound quality, the performers, and just goes for it. Now, in a little bit of a different vein, we have one of the classic versions of the Verdi Requiem from Carlo Maria Giulini, conducting the Philharmonia Orchestra and Choir in the early 60s. And it does have its, it brings the power in the exciting moments, but I think what sets this one apart is the I have to say, the more spiritual element, kind of more compassionate. Like Abbado, I would say he blends both of those elements of the work. The recording is fairly good, but it gets a little bit fuzzy in the louder moments. Excellent quartet of soloists. Elizabeth Schwarzkopf is the soprano again. Not quite as strong as she was a decade earlier for De Sabata, but still very dramatic. Christa Ludwig is wonderful in the mezzo solo, very dignified at the opening to the Lacrimosa, for example. Wonderful tenor solo from Nikolai Gedda. So a classic version that, in addition to the powerful, exciting moments, also has that layer of depth. Like I said at the beginning, it is still a religious work after all, so it's good to have a recording that is mindful of that. Next, I want to mention a mono recording from 1953 conducted by Ferenc Fritzsche. This is with the RIAS, which is the Radio in the American Sector Chamber Choir, as well as the Symphony Orchestra, Berlin Symphony Orchestra, in addition to the St. Hedwig's Cathedral Choir. And this is one of the fastest versions on record. It's just scintillating. The Dies Irae and the Tuba Mirum, they're just breathless, very exciting. But in the quieter moments, it still sounds lyrical. Like, for example, the Agnus Dei movement is taken at a flowing pace, but it's still very eloquent. And it's just a really exciting, dramatic version. The sound quality, unfortunately, I would say is a little bit cavernous. The choir sounds a little bit recessed. I wish there was a little bit more vibrancy and presence to the sound, but it is a scintillating performance. However, we do have a later version from Fritzsche from 1960, which is live. It's also in mono. But it does have more presence, I would say, in fullness compared to that earlier version. And the interesting thing here is he goes the opposite direction, actually. He actually slows it down quite a bit, more kind of similar to De Sabato or Reiner tempos. And it works very well. In fact, I would say this is one of the most dramatically impactful Verdi requiems around, precisely because he does do that, because he slows it down and then picks his spots at the exciting moments. A really impassioned, dramatic performance. Like that earlier one, it has Maria Stader as a very radiant soprano soloist. We have, again, our mezzo from the De Sabato recording, Aurelio Dominguez, just as dramatic and rich-toned here. So a really, really wonderful recording. The Liber Ame, Stader does a wonderful job on that one with the intensity, and then it ends with that quietness, where the cumulative impact of the entire drama really hits home. Just a wonderful recording. Next, I want to mention, believe it or not, a period performance from our friends John Elliott Gardner and the Monteverdi Choir and Orchestra Revolutionnaire et Romantique, recorded in 1992. And this is actually quite a revelation. They don't have that operatic power and fullness and opulence, no. But they bring that immaculate attention to detail and very energetic and powerful in the dramatic sections. It really does have its impact. But also, I think they also bring that element of the spiritual side of the work. There's a lot of dynamic contrast between the loud and the soft. The soloists, again, are not like the powerful operatic soloists, but they're very musical and expressive, particularly Anne-Sophie von Otter, the mezzo, and wonderfully recorded as well. So a recording that shows the work in a sort of a different way, but I think it's very valuable, at least as an alternative. And then finally, I want to mention a couple of historic recordings. Have to mention Arturo Toscanini. This is one of those cases, kind of like the Beethoven Ninth with Furtwängler, where you have a work that's very indelibly associated with a particular conductor. Toscanini was from the same area of Italy as Verdi. He actually started his career conducting Verdi operas and consulting with Verdi. And he was very identified with this work. Just brought that intensity and electricity and passion. Really, every time he conducts this work that you hear it on record, it just sounds like he's putting his life on the line and inspiring the performers to do the same. Like the Schulte, I would say it's a little bit more on the non-nuanced side, you might say, for lack of a better way of putting it. The version I recommend is probably the most circulated. This is the one from 1951. It's a live recording from Carnegie Hall, and compared to those, there was that notorious NBC studio that sounded so dry. Here you get to hear more of the fullness, especially in the orchestra. So that's a good thing. More presence to the sound quality than his earlier versions. But really a scintillating, exciting version. In the Dies Irae, I think he actually especially had the bass drum made for this, and it's really impactful. And then in the build-up to the Tuba Mirum with the brass, you can actually hear Toscani yelling, "Ah!" trying to get them enthused. Excellent quartet of soloists. You have Hervinelli, who was one of Toscani's favorites in Verdi operas, sounding very powerful. The mezzo Fedora Barbieri, rich-toned. And then you have the same tenor and bass that you have in the De Sabato recording, Giuseppe De Stefano and Cesare Siepi, sounding just as good here as well. So a classic version that I would not want to be without. However, I have to mention this other recording, another one of the greatest recordings of the Verdi Requiem from 1939, conducted by Tullio Serafin, with the Rome Opera House Chorus and Orchestra. And this is actually an all-Italian version, including the soloists. And it is magnificent. It's one of the fastest versions on record. But in addition to being scintillating and exciting, it's also beautifully lyrical, very passionate and powerful. With the soloist, you almost have to mention first the tenor, one of the greatest tenors on record, Beniamino Gigli. But he doesn't overdo it. You kind of almost wonder if he's going to kind of overshadow everybody, but he's actually fairly well behaved. The Ingemisco, where he's ringing that high note at the end, he just does it with seemingly effortless ease. But then there's also in the Ostias, towards the end, there's that sottovoce, which means like a hushed singing with his sweet honeyed tone. It just sounds wonderful. But then the other soloists as well. You have one of the greatest basses of all time, or at least on record, Ezio Pinza, with that deep basso cantabile, that singing bass tone, so flexible. And Maria Caniglia, a wonderfully powerful soprano, and then Ebe Stignani, wonderfully rich mezzo. So great quartet. And then, to top it all off, the remastering is fantastic. Actually, I would even say it's not just this Dutton transfer, because the EMI is also excellent. It's one of the best sounding historical recordings, really. It's a great way to get your feet wet if you're just wanting to sample historical recordings in general, I would say. Just a wonderful Verdi Requiem recording. All right, now we have just a couple of more. One is the Baroque Italian composer Vivaldi and his Gloria. Now he wrote two of them. They're both in the same key of D major, but this one, RV 589, is the most popular, so much that it's just simply referred to as the Vivaldi Gloria. And I think this is a work that can sometimes be kind of poo-pooed a little bit. It's not the most deep or profound work, but not everything has to be the Mass in B minor. It is a beautifully melodic work and wonderfully joyful. And I think it's one of those pieces of music to just enjoy it on its own terms. And my top choice for this is this disc that I've mentioned before, coupling with the Haydn Nelson Mass, as well as the short little Zadok the Priest by Handel. This is Sir David Wilcox with the King's College Choir and the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, an orchestra we associate quite a bit with Verdi. And it's just a beautiful version. It's both energetic and joyful. It has the boy soprano sound, which adds to that kind of liturgical sound, reverent sound. Among the soloists, you have Janet Baker sounding wonderful voice. So just a really kind of joyful version of a wonderful, joyful work. And then, finally, to finish it all off, we have 20th century composer William Walton and his work, Belshazzar's Feast. This work lasts a little bit more than half an hour. And if you like that sort of, exciting theatricality of the chorus and orchestra, this might be the piece for you. It's kind of makes me think of those Cecil B. DeMille biblical epics. It's depicting the Old Testament king Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, and he has a feast that makes up a large part of the middle of the work, and he makes a toast to the pagan gods with the vessels stolen from the temple in Jerusalem. He shouldn't have done that, because then a finger writes on the wall that the king's days are numbered, presumably the finger of God. By the way, that's where that saying comes from. The writing is on the wall. And sure enough, King Belshazzar's kingdom falls. So it's an entertaining kind of biblical epic of a work, narrated by a baritone. And my top choice for this one features Bryn Terfel as that baritone. I've mentioned him before. One of the greatest of all oratorio singers of our time. This is conducted by Andrew Litton with the Bournemouth Symphony and Chorus, recorded in 1995. Terfel brings, as you might expect, that character and power and richness, the hushed intensity he uses for that writing on the wall scene, for example. The orchestra also plays wonderfully. Walton, as you might know from his symphonies, has very exuberant writing for orchestra, and so you get excellent playing here, excellent pacing, very, very dramatic singing from the choir. So yeah, if you like, the kind of theatrical side of chorus and orchestra works, this might be the work and the recording for you. All right, and we have come to the end of this chapter. Really, what we have left is opera, and then, as I mentioned earlier, Renaissance music as well. So with that, I want to wish you all a great day and happy listening.